thing right out of the water. All right. And welcome. We are live. This is HALENVILLE Live. It is 9:03, August 3rd, 2022. Neil Daly, Charles Green, hanging out. We got a big show. We're talking about the Shark guitar tonight, and we got some special guests. We are gonna do some trivia later on. Yeah, exciting night. I can barely contain myself. Neil, how you doing, dude?
I'm good. I'm good. Aside from sweltering in the heat, just like everybody else across the country, I'm digging in, man. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, it is summertime.
Yeah,
Look,
and you timed this perfectly because technically it's the Shark Guitar Show, but it happened after Shark Week because last week I was kind of busy.
Yeah. That's right. It's all about the Sharks this week.
Yes, it is.
That's
It
right.
is.
Yeah. All right. So we got a lot to cover tonight.
Yes, we do.
Before we bring in our guests and start, let's recognize the chat before we get rolling. Good. I see all the cool kids over here. We'll start with Ryan Hall right there. Welcome, dude.
Right on,
Guitar Man 45.
Guitar Man.
Astra TV. Holly
Hey,
Lewis.
Good to see you.
Brendan
Welcome
B.
to
Squared. Christopher
Hello.
Live Sour. Taylor Green. Papa Blue.
Taylor.
Keith Campbell.
Papa.
Our guest last week.
Sorry I missed you, buddy. Sorry I missed you. Happy birthday, man.
Keith.
Let's see. Dan in New Jersey is here. Tim Thomas.
Dan.
Hey, dude.
Tim.
I'm scrolling up. All right. Alan Garber. Hey, dude. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, Alan. Right on, bro.
Gret Zeppelin. Polly Walnuts. Dude,
Yeah.
thanks for the shirt, my brother.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Man,
Right
I'm
on.
afraid to go to the water, brother.
Yeah.
I know
Paulie,
he's
all
gotta
rise.
Get up early. Yeah, Paulie, good to see you, dude. Let's scroll up. Gord Coffin, good to see
Hey,
you.
it's
Welcome.
nice to meet you. Welcome to
Yeah,
Halen.
man. Welcome. All right, still scrolling. I'm on it. Jerry Lyca's here. Hey, Jerry.
Jerry,
Hey, Jerry.
bro.
Sweet.
All right, Sandra Pokorney is in the chat, and
Sandra.
she'll be guarding the gate from her vacation nest. Yeah, hey Sandra, good to see you, babe.
She's out riding tractors.
No, she's hanging out with David Lee Roth.
I know.
I've got a picture. You want to see it real quick?
Show it.
I swear, she sends me this a little while ago. This is why she's on vacation, you guys. There he is. That's a tractor wheelbarrow, I guess he's got, and she's hanging out with Dave. I'm just saying.
Right on, Sandra.
Just saying.
That might have to be our next T-shirt swap.
I'm there, brother. I'm there.
Coolness. Right on. All right, let's see. I saw somebody. Adam Roach. Hey, Adam. Good
Hey,
to
man.
See you, Adam. Right
What's up,
on,
pal?
bro.
Yeah, I knew I saw somebody else. Yeah, so in order to talk about the Shark, we huddled up with Johnny B Guitars, Chris Gill, and Donny Ward, and we're going to bring those guys in now.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Welcome, guys.
Oh my God, Johnny B. Well played.
Man.
Well played, sir.
Entrance.
Oh man,
Nice.
that's what I'm talking about.
Hey, normal Shark guitar. That's the one.
Nice.
That's the one.
So we got Johnny B Guitars with us, Chris Gill, and Donny Ward. Guys, thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure, guys.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to hang out and talk about the Shark tonight. Yep.
Chris Gill, you hawking your action figures again?
Off of that, we got the Keith Campbell limited edition. What can you say? It's one of a kind.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
it is. Very cool, man. That is
Right on. Hey, Dwight Bailey.
Dwight, it's good to see you, brother.
All right. So where do you start with the Shark guitar? I mean, it has to go back to a Gibson Explorer.
Well, let's we talked about this. We don't want to give out the bat for the people who are going to doze off and fall asleep right away. We wanted to address some of these myths that have been out there about Eddie Sharp for 50 years. Just to get those out of the way, and we'll get into more detail on those later. But now, one thing, this has been pretty well debunked. Most people who have seen some of the stuff over the last 10 or so years know this is not true. But it used to be believed that the Explorer Destroyer, when it was in the Ivanhoe Destroyer, was in its full uncut shape, that Ed got it and he painted it silver because that was based on the black and white photos and people thought it was kind of gray. And there's sort of like really full reproductions or whatever. But we all know now from the color photos, Marvin Rennig, that he actually did it. So let's get that one out of the way. Dead and dead. Now, the other thing, when those photos became a little bit more widely disseminated, and we did an article in Guitar World magazine, I talked with Ed, and he told me, and this was just, one of those things that's been so many years, and I don't recall details, but he said that he painted Destroyer and Frankie white at the same time. That's not true now for many reasons. We have photos of Ed with the white Destroyer in '76, and we don't see the black and white Frankie in the middle of '77. So it's a good year and a half. It's just, it's Ed being Ed and not really quite remembering the details because, hey, he's a phenomenal guitar player. Not, story. One thing I saw in some forums is that people were saying that the chrome cover, they had two different pickups, chrome covered pickups. One was really bright and shiny, and the other one was kind of dull, so that means that they changed the pickup. Well, I've got my example here, the Greco, but the same exact thing. And this is brand spanking minty fresh. And you can see that the neck pickup is nice and shiny, and the bridge pickup's kind of dull looking. That's just natural wear and tear from the sweat of your playing hand. Doesn't that change the pickups from, put a chrome, had a chrome one in the neck and a nickel in the bridge? This means that he played this thing and he sweat, and he played the clubs, and he played that Destroyer an awful lot in the club. So therefore, the cover got a little bit of, and you guys join in on me here if you want to, add anything. The other thing, again, we now know thanks to the wonderful book that Greg Renoff did. The supplement has a photo from Don Landy. The one photo we have of Van Halen recording the first album in the studio. So we now know proof that the Destroyer was completely intact. It had not been modified to the Shark yet when Van Halen recorded the debut album. That came after it. That's after we don't know, but we have a lapse for basically those first couple of weeks of September when they were recording the first album through the appearance of the Shark, the earliest as far as we know, in December of '77.
Hey, Chris, if I may for a moment, I've seen a couple of people in the chat mention your audio. They're having a little trouble hearing you, and I don't want them to miss this at all.
Yeah,
so
your audio's gone down since we've been live.
You kind of sound like you're a little underwater, and
that's why I'm in this blackness here. Like I'm trying to rescue Esteban, man.
It is Shark Week. I don't know.
It is Shark Week. He's cage diving.
Let me get a little bit closer to the mic.
Yeah, we want to hear you crisp and clear, bro.
Maybe if you sat a little closer too, Chris.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now? Is that better?
It's a little better. It is better, I believe.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, bro.
Now, Johnny, you can bring up the next one, which is how Ed cut the body. How did he do it?
Not with a chainsaw.
Not with a chainsaw.
Or a hacksaw. You hear that one all the time.
But of course, Ed said famously in those early interviews, I took out a chainsaw. And I cut up. Of course, he didn't talk like that in interviews, but that was after all the cigarettes and whatever. But
zero evidence that he used a chainsaw.
Yeah,
Zero.
It's not even possible. It would have fucking destroyed it.
Yeah.
Well, you got to think too. Eddie really loved this guitar at the time more than any other guitar he probably owned. I doubt that he would just recklessly take a chainsaw to it. It's amazing that he did what he did to it. And I have a theory about where he came up with the concept of it, but we'll talk about that later. But definitely it wasn't a chainsaw. And a hacksaw would be impossible, because if you think about how a hacksaw is, it's got the metal bar that goes on the top. You'd only be able to cut in like 4 inches, and then that's as far as you could go. So, but he didn't take the blade out and continue on. That's I think what he used. Well, obviously it's a drill press, because the holes are exactly 90 degrees. Even a skilled person with a hand drill couldn't drill that accurately. And then probably a jigsaw.
Well, I always thought a bandsaw is kind of what I thought when I first saw it, because the drill holes might have gone first. This is how I did it in my mind. I thought the drill holes went first, then he sent it straight down a control, because a bandsaw is high speed and it's very controlled. You could follow a pencil line if you had to, you know.
No problem. And I'll tell you right now, I think the holes were drilled so that he could take a jigsaw and cut that out.
Go hole to hole.
I don't think he had enough tools to. If he had a bandsaw, he would have used it. And it would be nice and clean. I think he wanted it nice and clean. I don't think the holes were supposed to remain. But I think what he did was he drew a line on the body, and then he wasn't thinking, and he lined the drill up with the line. And then afterwards realized that he should have went beside the line, because he has to remove all that wood, right? And by that time it was too late. Measure twice, cut once.
Right.
And I think he was really trying to do a clean job, but ended up with what he did. And later on the show, I'll show you a mock-up that I did, a Photoshop of what I think his initial idea of what the guitar would look like.
Is there any truth to the rumor that he was in Malibu surfing, took the guitar out on the waves with his board, and a shark actually bit into the guitar, and that's the teeth mark?
Yes.
I'm not saying I created that rumor.
That's straight out of Hollywood, dude.
That looks like a shark bite.
Let's do some testing.
Yeah.
It fits pretty well.
Yeah, it's a match. It's a match. You heard it here, folks.
That's awesome.
All right, the next one. This one's been debunked, fortunately, thanks to the EVH sort of replica that has come out not too long ago. It used to be believed, and this is something I've noticed, people used to think that it was red, this burgundy red with white stripes. We know that's now actually kind of this kind of dullish silver gray color. And Johnny, we'll get into that later too, about why it's silver gray. But it's definitely not white. Now, under the lights of photography, it has a tendency to blow out white. It's a little bit reflective. This is a photo that Kevin Scanlon took when I went up there in 2013. And it looks white. It looks like white stripes, but I've seen it 2 times in the flesh. But it's a silver grayish color. So it's not, it wasn't, you just put tape on it from the old white finish and sprayed it red. So, and it was actually, the other thing is it was a really competent, very well done, better done than Frankenstein. I mean, it was, if you get to go up close to it and look at it, he really took his time and took his care with it, which is why I think there was a kind of a 3-4 month period that he really had to sit there and fiddle with this thing, work on it, and really perfect the paint job and everything before he appeared with it at those whiskey shows.
I'm amazed that, Chris and you guys, I'm just thoroughly amazed that he would do that to such a beautiful instrument. On the Frankie, all he was doing was just making a pickup cavity a little bigger. I mean, that was it, hammered for the most part, except for all the stripes. But as far as the wood modifications, it was all it was, right? And so he comes up and it's just a year later, and he hacks a major chunk out of the guitar. And we talked about it, earlier. Now you guys are going to talk about this. He destroyed the guitar essentially, per chapter 3 of your book, Chris. He, in that interview, out of his mouth, he says, "I had a beautiful instrument that sounded like a fat Les Paul. I essentially chopped a chunk of wood out of it. I turned it into a thin, weak Strat." That's, I believe, the terminology he said, and he messed it up. Quote. So,
I think what it was is that, the album was coming out and he wanted to make an impression.
Oh yeah, sure.
Black and white striped guitar, but everything looked the rock star part.
Yeah,
it looked a little blank compared to the Frankie.
Ed doesn't get enough credit for being a visual artist, you know, and even though he kind of talks about like, oh, I was like, you know, just a, you know, t-shirt and jeans kind of guy when we were playing in the clubs, and like, but no, come on, look at Van Halen, man. It's like those guys, they had style.
Yeah, they had an image. Yeah.
You know, and they just were going for it, you know, and I think that was it. You know, it's, I mean, you just look at that transition, you know, that was even happening through the club years to the end, and then they get to the Van Halen, you know, the debut album, man, they're slick, you know.
Yeah. Well, even if you notice, even before he routed out that guitar, he went through a phase where he was very consciously doing white and black on everything.
Yeah, everything in his clothes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, right.
I think he got inspired and saw the red and thought, wow, this is gonna really pop now, you know. So, and it's a classic, you know, thing, and you know, Brad Walensky has this whole thing about the steel, you know, however you say it in Dutch thing, but I think that had kind of this subliminal thing, because it's a lot of primary colors, red, white, and black, or it's, you know, blue, yellow, and white, you know, or whatever, and very primary and everything like that. And I think he kind of had that, you know, 3-color combination thing that really just kind of stuck with him.
You know, he was very, for lack of a better word, he was very introverted. He was very quiet. He got into himself, you know, that's, you know, and I believe when I read it, I get the vibe that he's reflecting back to something from his childhood, the art form, you know, it's something that made him comfortable. It's something that he identified with, and he just carried it with him, literally carried it with him. I find that fascinating.
Level too, I don't think he was really even aware of it. You know, it's just one of those
yes.
And it just was one of those things that kind of implants in your brain somehow, and you see it at a very young age, and it just, you know, it's like a parasite sticks in there.
Yeah, like Johnny, you've mentioned before, like the racing, the racer that he had with the helmet and stuff. You know, those kind of things. Like, I don't think he actively set out to say, "I'm going to copy that." I think it was just something that was in his head that he'd seen before.
I think when he saw Chip Kinman's guitar, it all sort of came together. Seeing the stripes on a guitar, I think, was enough for him to go, "That looks pretty cool. Now I know what to do." Where before he might have been a little lost. Like, I think Roth really was throwing a bug in his ear, trying to, you got to do something with your guitar, and he was kind of coming up with nothing. You know, he's writing music and, you know, building a guitar. He didn't know how to make it look cool, but when he saw Chip Kinman's guitar, I think it was enough for him. The light bulb went on. He remembered the Tim Hart, the motocross
R2,
racer,
R3,
everything.
Yeah. Hey guys, before we go too much farther into the actual shark itself,
hey Lenny,
there's been so much made about the history of the discovery of the Frankie and where the wood came from and where he got the body and the necks and all this stuff. Can you guys share with our listeners a little bit about when he acquired the original the guitar in the first place?
The original,
the shark, yeah.
The shark. Oh yeah, that's well. We will get into that actually. We'll bring it up later. Let's get through these rumors, and then we're going to get into this.
Sure. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're going to get right to that. The next thing I just do want to talk about, and again, Johnny, we're going to bring in as well, and Don, you too. The wood. You know, first of all, most of us know this, but just for those out there who aren't aware, the destroyer, the Ibanez destroyer, was not made of Carina. Was never made of Carina. You know, they made it look like Carina. They had an ad in early, mid 75, early 76 that said Carina. You know, but they also did a lot of things that were wrong. You know, they also called it Select Ash. They called it any number of things. Mm-hmm. That the destroyer is made out of is what's called Sen. And there's a couple of names for it in Japan. Haragiri is one. The official Latin name is Castor Auralia, not Arabia, Auralia. And there's also, I can't even say this one, Acanthopanix ricinifolia of the family Auraliaceae.
Wow.
But it is a genuine wood. It is grown mostly in Asia, Japan, Korea, parts of China, I think even into Russia. It was used a lot in the Japanese furniture industry and also for like decorative wooden items and things like that. It's generally kind of a smaller tree. And we'll get into the details of that later about the construction of the actual Ibanez and Greco which were both the same, made the Kangaki, Japan, made these guitars. But it's not a form of ash. It's its own type of wood. It's actually lighter.
Hey, Joe.
It's in between swamp ash and northern ash. Basically, swamp ash comes to about an average of 43 pounds per cubic foot. Northern ash comes out to about 41 pounds per cubic foot, and sen is right in the middle at 35 pounds per cubic foot. So it's lighter than northern ash, not quite as light as swamp ash, but it's a very light, very resonant wood, and it's kind of sad because the Japanese guitar industry has kind of put that aside, and it was very common in the 70s material that was used, and of course back then they just didn't really care about being accurate. You didn't have to do it.
Right.
You didn't have to and all these other duties to deal with and have to actually document what type of wood. So Hoshino and Hasbro and all that, which their marketing materials would call it any number of things: Japanese sen, Japanese ash, select ash, Karina, and their early ads. But it's sen is a distinct type of wood. And I love it. They brought it back. It's actually cool wood. And I know there's a company or a builder actually in France that's making that. The name I can't remember right now, and I have it written down somewhere. But Magneto guitars and called 2-wave sen. That's with the sen body. And I think it's a cool wood. And I have my Greco Explorer. Love it to death. So. And now let the show begin. We got the rumors out of the way.
Excellent.
I'm going to unload mouth mode right now. I just want to start off what I know from Ed and us talking about his background and his progression of guitars. And we know about the Les Paul that he got in 1969, and that got stolen from him at one point. He was in his trusty guitar for a good number of years. Got stolen, and went out looking for a replacement. And of course, now we're talking about 74, maybe early 75. I can't remember the exact year now, but I think it was actually early 75. He goes out to get a replacement for it. And, we're talking about the height of glam rock. And that gets himself Flying V.
Yeah, the New York Dolls were huge then, Chris, right?
And it's the Mark Bolan T-Rex,
Yep.
It's got, the LeMay shirt and the satin pants, and everything like that. And he's fully, he gets this into Ibanez. And Ed said it was an Ibanez, and it was kind of confirmed by English Kathy in the Paul Brannigan book. She said it was an Ibanez. Some people have said it's an Electra because basically it was like typical of most Japanese stuff. A couple factories made these copies. They look basically the same. But there's enough distinctive features about the Flying V, which I won't get into because it's just nuts and bolts minutia. But I will say it's an Ibanez. I mean, mainly because the pickups are kind of one of the distinguishing characteristics of it. It's not an Electra. A lot of people want to imagine that somehow that Ed had this guitar and ended up in James Hetfield's hands.
Oh, by the way, happy birthday to James Hetfield. Today is his birthday.
Excalibur.
Right on.
Oh.
I was one of those people who imagined that for the longest time because I worked on an Electra V kit for a guy, but I came to the same conclusion that it was an Ibanez.
And Ed said it was an Ibanez. And it doesn't have the logo on there, but at that time in 74, 75, Ibanez didn't actually have the logo on the truss rod cover. Life came around later. So we have that. That guitar gets stolen. Ed has it a couple of months. That guitar gets stolen. And so anyways, it's Ed's going out. He needs to get a replacement. And it seems to me like, he told me that he liked that Ibanez a lot, and so he had a good relationship with the brand. And Ibanez was, can remember very well, Chesbro. I lived in Southern California at the time, and Chesbro did a great job distributing Ibanez throughout Southern California. They were everywhere. And I got an Ibanez, my first brand new electric guitar. My friend in my band, Robert, who, he got an Ibanez Iceman. Most of my friends had Ibanezes. It's like, they were super affordable, super playable. They were better than what Gibson was making at the time.
Yeah.
Well, and so Ed had developed this relationship with it. You know, he liked it. So I don't know the exact details of the story, but we know that Ed goes sometime in '75 after the Chicago NAMM show when Hoshino and I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember what the name of that distributor Ibanez on the East Coast is, but anyways, they show it at Chicago NAMM show that summer. It ends up at this dealer, and Ed and Chris Holmes both go in and they buy identical destroyers sometime in mid to late '75, and that's the shit. That's Ed loves that guitar. That's over the moon with this thing. And we do have a picture. Excuse me. The Tahitian village picture where you can see it still with the the natural Karina finish. And if you look closely at the knobs, you can really see it there with the lights, a little bit too much glare. But he already has the speed knobs on it in that photo.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we've ever seen a picture of it prior to the speed knobs, which is interesting.
Yeah, we don't really see the gold, top hat knobs that are normally on.
Well, so mine has gold speed knobs, not top hat knobs, and I think a lot of the pre-serials were speed knobs. They're all over the place, of course, because of how they distributed them. But it's very interesting to me that they're the same kind of knob as what you might see on a guitar of this vintage, but they're white and not gold.
Yeah, and you can see here because it's like there's a better up close of it. You can see that they look like they're white. They don't look like they're gold. They definitely stand out.
They definitely look white. They look white.
They certainly are. They certainly are, because when we see the Frank later, they swap knobs and they're definitely those same white speed knobs.
Yeah.
So that's he started with that modification on it. We have another photo. I believe it's at Pasadena Civic or one of the college shows, but you can kind of see it from the side there, and you can see it's not finished yet. And if you look closely, you can kind of see the knobs there too.
And the Ibanez logo, interestingly, because we don't see that, as we know, we don't see that many photos of it natural. And once Ed paints it, he covers up the Ibanez logo.
Right. And here's a early photo of Chris Holmes with his.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. I've never seen that photo.
If I could jump in real quick about the Holmes and Ed connection with the Destroyers, a buddy of mine used to go to Dr. Music and hang out. He's very young. He didn't know anything about guitars. He was trying to, he wanted to be a guitar player. So he would go in there because he saw, why am I blanking? What's the guy from Kiss? Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley played one. And he would go in there and hang out, and he thought they looked so cool. So he would play these Destroyers at Dr. Music. Well, there were two of them. A week later, after he's hanging around, both of them are gone, and he's really upset. Where did they go? I can't play these guitars anymore. Well, those two guitars turned out to be the one that Chris Holmes and Ed bought.
Oh,
Wow.
Wow. That's awesome.
Cool.
Right on.
That's just great, bro.
So we don't know the exact date, but it wasn't too much shorter after Ed got it that he paints it white. Now I don't know if this is the first sequential photo, but this is a great shot. Again, that's one of it looks like the Pasadena Civic or one of those halls or college shows or whatever, bigger room. That some auditorium somewhere, but it's now white. And I did thanks to Alan Garber. He posted a bunch of old flyers, and there was this one of Dan Halen with Stormer, and that was dated July. Hold on, there we go. July 31st, Texan Auditorium, Pasadena City College. July of '76. So we know at least by since seeing how it has the photo of that white Destroyer, and knowing how much time it took to go to Photomat and get the photos back or whatever.
Right.
It's probably like at least in June, at the earliest, maybe probably earlier though, that had printed it white. So, so we have that, and we have Organic Azaris, and that they started playing there, and he's got the white Destroyer, Organic Azaris.
Look how young
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah,
My goodness, he looks like a flat child.
He had a phase there in '76 where he looked really, really young. It must have been a haircut or something. And
Yeah.
He looks like Donny.
with the shirt.
I just want to point out that you two are trying to out-rock each other in muscle shirts, and it's cool.
Yeah, except the
I don't know who's going to win here.
Donny looks like he's like 18 years old. I don't. I'm jealous.
Having the authentic, donut and hot dog shirt though, so that Ed wore for like 5 years.
He's wearing it in that picture. In fact, you can't see it; it's blown out. But others from the set, you can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
One of Kevin Estrada's photos at Starwood. You can see the destroyer there, to the back.
Yeah.
That's your proof.
These ones were these were the summer of '76. That was when the Strat had the zebra pickup on it, and it hadn't been all hacked out yet. It was a real nice, clean, pickguard mount and everything. So, anyways, one thing that was great is when Marvin Rennick's color photos appeared, and you could really see the destroyer in excellent detail. And here's the famous photo that we ran in Guitar World. But you can see it nicely. You can see the Super 70s in there. Still the stock Super 70s pickups. The only two modifications. One is the Strat knobs are now on there, and unfortunately, on a lot of those other photos, the white is so blown out that you can't really see the knobs. But here you can see that there's Stratocaster knobs on there.
Got it. Yeah.
The knobs took the speed knobs off and put them on the Strat, and he took the Strat knobs off and put them on the Story. The other thing he did was swap out the bridge and put on what appears to be a gold Gibson bridge. I mean, it's a gold Gibson 2-matic. That's now on there. I have a theory about that because I did exactly the same thing. I had a different reason though, but it was about the same time. I was a kid, and brass, man, that was a shit. Brass everything, brass nut, brass bridge. Put as much brass on your guitar as you can. And I had a 65 SG, and it had those nylon, pieces in here. And I contacted one of my brother's friends who was a guitar nut, and he had all kinds of parts and everything. He got me this gold bridge, and I put this on my SG because I wanted those brass pieces. Now, I don't think that was solely the reason why, because the other thing is with I don't know if they can see it or not, but this is a Greco, but on the bridge, you can see like those screws. They're inset. They're really hard to reach with a screwdriver to adjust your intonation. Whereas the Gibson style is much easier to do. I don't know. Ed never talked about why he put the bridge on there. That's the theory. It could have been a double performance thing. It could have been because he wanted, heavier brass. He thought the metal wasn't up to snuff. And he probably wanted it to be easier to adjust the intonation.
Well, one thing I always say is whenever Eddie did anything, it was to solve what he thought was a problem.
Yeah.
He never did anything just for the hell of it or even for aesthetics very often. It was always to fix a problem.
Yep.
So that fits exactly into it.
And one other telltale detail, Alan, again, he's been obsessed with this, is the truss rod cover. It has kind of the Bell Gibson shape to it, rounded. Whereas on the later destroyers, they had kind of to kind of satiate Gibson a bit and say like, you copy your thing here. They kind of made a more blocky kind of thing. And the other thing is because I have my Greco over here, 77, and it's got the same style of the style on there. So and that was basically because Greco was sold in Japan and people didn't travel. There was no internet, so it's like, Gibson's different.
Yeah, right.
So, anyways, as far as I know, as far as we can tell, the destroyer is in this exact condition. In that late 76 shot of the Starwood, it stays that way pretty much through the recording of the first Van Halen album. We don't see any evidence of that changing the pickups. And I will attest to those Super 70s. The Greco has the equivalent. They're made by Maxon. It's made by Maxon. They called the U2000s the Greco, but the same as the Super 70s with the branding thing. Those things are vicious. They have this upper mid-range bite to them. They're a little bit higher output. They're really weird because they're basically constructed in a traditional PAF style line, construction and everything. The only difference is 8 magnets that are in there, which boost. And it's kind of it's powerful like a ceramic, but it's not quite as ice picky as a ceramic pickup. But it's definitely got a punch to it. And it definitely pushes an amp hard. Okay. And it's got a growl to it. And I've discovered, it was funny because when I first got that Greco, it was about 2009, maybe 2010, and I plugged it into my 5153, and I thought, this thing sounds harsh. It just doesn't sound nice. And I think the 5150 is actually compensated, for a more traditional pickup to kind of get that Eddie Van Halen mid-range, that treble, everything. But man, you plug that into my old Hi-Rod, you plug it into my old KVMPs, my JCM 800s, like my couple of my Friedmans, it just gets magical. It just gets, there's the, let's talk about the songs that that was that the square appeared on. Running with the Devil, You Really Got Me, the rhythm track, James Crying, Feel Your Love Tonight, and On Fire, all the non-tremolo.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've seen these things on forums about people saying like, it had to be using some type of a boost or something like that. Because man, listen to how distorted On Fire sounds. Super 70. And it's right hand.
Yeah. Well,
I believe that. Yep.
That's where it comes from.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now we get to the shark. Let's go into the details of those cuts, like you talked about. About the whole thing. I want to see your diagram. But that's that he's got this time off. They're not playing so many gigs. They're winding down. We don't see the Destroyer until the Shark. And at these whiskey shows, New Year's Eve of 77. I got a bunch of photos here, so I actually have that photo, famous Cat Haynes thing, Magic, where again you can see the Destroyer. That was in August of 77, right before they recorded the first album. So you can still see the Destroyer there, and I do have to show the detail of the Don Landy shot. Again, you can see white and not been cut up.
Wow.
That's the only photo we have of the session that the recording Van Halen won. So we have definitive proof now that he had not turned the Destroyer into the Shark yet when he recorded the first album.
Now, to add to that, I believe that's the only photo we have of the band recording during recording a song from the era, which is very interesting.
Wow.
From any of the stuff, because everything else, especially the Roth era, we have stage shots. We have the stage Lozo or Sunset Sound stuff. We have the stage Lozo stuff for 1984. But we don't have photos of them working in the studio. It's too bad. I mean, it's kind of, I wish that Val's brother, had hung out because he took all these great photos of that. I wish he was there like Linda Eastman McCartney was, around the Beatles when they were.
Yeah.
It would have been so cool to see that stuff. We just don't have that. It's sad. It's unfortunate.
It's amazing how there's nothing. That's just mind-boggling. You would think there'd be more than a ton of pictures. You would think there would be.
They were moving at such a rapid pace, and I think it's one of those things we just didn't think about. It's just like how we don't have, film.
Yeah.
An entire live show. I still see people out there insisting that Oakland was shot, but I know the economics of that back in the day because I worked for a record label at the same time. And it's just expensive as heck to get a film crew out film, and as it was, they were there for 2 nights and they filmed 3 songs for promotional purposes. And I believe that story. That's all they got with those 3 songs. Together and do these things. I don't.
Yeah.
And I worked for Boardwalk Records, which had Joan Jett, and Joan wanted to do a video because MTV was brand new. And Neil Bogart, the owner of Boardwalk Records, said, "Nope, we're not going to do that. You got to pay for it out of your own pockets. Don't get it. Cheap good black and white rock and roll. What happened? The album was number one."
Yeah.
But, it's particularly tragic because the complexity of the history of Ed's guitars and the band in general in the studio, there's so many rumors that come up, and it's hard to combat them because we are speculating a lot. But those sorts of details, if the photos existed or the footage existed in the studio, none of this would be a problem.
Yeah,
we have answers to all of it. So instead, we have to speculate and use all these funky methods. But I think we do a pretty good job. Chris is you're the
Very
master
thorough.
of that. So yeah.
Yeah.
So whiskey, Bill, that's kind of in the dark there, but you can see chart. You can see the 61 Strat now with the finished stripped and stratified again, and of course the Frankenstein backwards. There he is playing the shark with the whiskey stripe. Van Halen 1 cover shirt on.
I was wondering, after the album, they got an advance from Warner Brothers. And that's around the time that Eddie would have gone to Charvel to get the Bumblebee produced, right? He brought his Frankie in to have it reproduced. Like, basically, that was his prototype, right?
Oh, well, I think so. I think I don't know all the details, and unfortunately, the people at the time are kind of crazy with the exact details. I know that the Bumblebee starts to appear late in the '78 tour. I think in England, I think he has it. So
in Anaheim, he got it. Yeah, when the tour came back around. Yeah.
I mean, who knows how long it was in production?
Yeah, who knows how.
Yeah, it could have been sitting waiting for him to show up in Anaheim and pick it up at Charvel. But I was wondering, this is like kind of a theory put together, because I know Eddie said in an article once that he wanted Charvel to paint the Ibanez, but they couldn't do it in time. And I never understood what he meant by that. But now it makes sense in that time zone. They didn't have time to do it because they're going to hit the road. They could make the Bumblebee because they have to make a whole guitar. He's willing to let him do that. And I was wondering if maybe he had a conversation with Wayne Charvel about turning it into the Shark, and that's what he meant by they didn't have time, and that he went home and decided to do it himself.
It's interesting because I think that
Interesting.
Got a lot of pointers from them, but again,
hey, Chris.
Well done.
Hey, Chris, let me interrupt you real quick. Your audio is going underwater again, brother. And once again, we don't want to miss any words you say, my man. So I had to say something, bro.
I must be having a bandwidth problem. Must be Verizon or something.
See, right there, it's pretty crisp.
Okay.
Right, guys?
It sounds like when anyone else is talking, it'll drown Chris out.
Oh.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
I've been told that quite a few times, though. So.
I'm trying to find this damn shark that killed us now.
We don't want to miss a word you say, Chris. That's all, man.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to add with the shark. I mean, the paint job's very, very well done. The lines are crisp on it. John, let's talk about the paint. Let's talk about why it's silver gray. Because you know the paint stuff better than anybody.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it goes back to the Schwinn bicycle paint that Eddie used, because I think he had his eye on that stuff. He was using the black and white, and we have that theory that maybe that was the curb paint that him and Alex were using, and maybe they had a box of it, so it was just handy. Once they got that advance, it's like winning the lottery, right? He's like, I'm using Schwinn paint now, and I think that had a lot to do with it. But Schwinn paint, I looked into a lot of stuff, a lot of websites talking about Schwinn bicycles and the paint, because there's bicycle nerds out there just like guitar nerds, and there's a lot of interesting websites that really break down the whole process of this candy apple, multi-layers, putting decals in between the layers to change colors and create all these interesting effects. So when it comes to the Shark guitar, it's a two-step process where it's a silver coat and then a candy apple burgundy on top. So that's why it's not white. I mean, he could have done it, but going into the store, buying all this stuff, the lids actually say on here what to use as a base. And I found, this goes back quite a while. This is the shark color right here. And if you look on the lid, it says use only with aluminum undercoat, and it has a code right here. And that's what he would have read. Let me get the other.
Cool.
Here we go. This is the one. This is somebody a couple of years ago selling a box of Schwinn paint. Let me get the right. There's the silver beside it. They actually have them in the box at the same.
Wow.
Actually, where's the? Here's in that box. If you look at the green can, that's lime green. We see that later on the Rasta guitar. So he may have actually bought multiple cans, not knowing what color he wanted to use, but just like, this one's cool, that one's cool, kid in a candy shop, and gone home and then decided. And I'll tell you, I think, you wonder why he sanded down that 61 Strat body. Like, why did he spend all the time? Because first of all, I had the sunburst coat on it, and then he painted it white. So there was a lot of paint that he had to sand off. Why did he do it just to get a bare body? I think he was intending to paint that guitar as well. But, the Shark had, he needed to have that finished before the tour started. So the silver is kind of, I don't know, Chris, you've seen it up close, but in photos, it does drown out and it loses the real look of it. But from what I can see in photos and, good, bad, whatever we have, it looks to me like it's not your typical gray silver, like metallic silver, but it almost does have kind of a whiteness to it, a very light silver, right? Is that accurate? Or
yeah, it's really kind of it's kind of a flat. It's not super metallic, not super shiny,
like almost a pearl.
Not even a pearl. It's kind of a flat gray, not primer gray, not, but it's got just a very slight hint of shininess to it. But this is the thing. It's as a photographer. I mean, when Kevin Scanlon was doing those shots, we just had to rush through guitars, so we didn't have time to get the lighting just perfect. And it's hard because you move the lights just a little bit, and it just reflects in a different way. But, it's a gray, and it's just kind of it is kind of a very flat looking. It is, I wouldn't say it's white per se, but it might be off white, I guess, not really cream, but there is a distinct grayness and a little bit of a silver shine to it, but not
more like you're looking at actual aluminum, right? It's got that sort of metallic-y look to it.
So the color in it is really a metal flake. Is that correct?
It's quite subtle, but there is a metallic tinge to it. There's a very interesting picture that came out around the time that people were hotly debating, is it white? Is it gray? Is it silver? There's a picture of Chip Ellis playing it, presumably to measure it out to do the EVH Stripe series in very early stages. And in the horn here, right about here on the guitar, there's a spot where he had masked off an area, or it was leftover tape or something, and half of it is white and half of it is silver because the tape pulled it away or something like that. And you can see a nice clear contrast between the white lacquer and the silver undercoat and see how they compare in that picture.
So the answer is it's actually all those colors.
Well, yeah, because the white is underneath the base coat, right?
Excellent.
But it's a candy apple. The red is a candy apple meant to go over top of the silver. Eddie putting the stripes on it, that's really not what you're supposed to do. If you're painting a bicycle, you put the silver coat on and then you put the burgundy over top. Nobody would even know the silver is under it.
Right.
So Eddie
so he almost used that silver as a primer, so to speak, and then just left stripes on it.
Yeah, it's a base to develop the multi-layer effect that they're trying to.
It's interesting.
In the 60s and 70s use this kind of stuff.
Yeah, Johnny. It's interesting because what the process of the way Eddie did it takes a product that's supposed to be applied and have a finished result. And what he actually did is he fragmented it. Every one of those tape lines fragments that finish, and it gives it dimension and scope to the actual pattern that you're looking at.
It's just layer upon layer upon layer because I've put the chips on it, the paint chips from the wear and tear, and you can see the yellowed quote unquote Carina finish underneath, it's the white paint, and then the silver gray, and then the red, so it's like coat upon coat upon coat.
Yeah.
Here's something that I was telling Chris about this a couple of days ago. When I made my shark 15 years ago, I had a bunch of these photos, blow-ups of the chips. And I kind of forgot about this, but if you look really close here, it looks like there's black in there. And when I was doing my shark, I looked at some old photos that I haven't seen in over a decade. And I actually painted it black. I was going to relic it, and I decided not to. But I'm looking at this now, and I'm like, okay, there's black, but is it black or an illusion? We've never seen a photo of him playing it black. So I don't know if this is something that he sprayed under it just before he put the white coat on or what, but it's I was kind of looking at it.
Wow,
thinking,
that's very deceiving though. When you look at it, it could be something or nothing.
Because you should see the wood right here, obviously, and then the finish that was on there from the factory was like an amber finish, like it's basically clear with a tint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he would have put the white on, and the white and the silver in this photo, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And then of course the red on top, but this mystery black here all of a sudden is sticking out, and I'm wondering, like, okay, another mystery that I forgot about. I forgot about painting mine black.
Yeah.
I don't think it was. I think that's just shading, because I don't recall seeing any black on it. And just looking again, I have a pretty decent photo from Kevin Scanlon, and I don't see any black in the chips that you can see.
On the back, it doesn't show it. I don't know if it shows on here. You see on the back, it just looks like it's chips. You don't see that black effect.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of strange what's going on there.
I'll say that on my 77 era replica, I did black than white, because if you look at the pics in 77, you can see what may be little pieces of wear, chips that go down to black in various spots, the tip of the headstock there. And I very subtly reproduced that. But if you pull up those pictures and look at it, it's to me, it's fairly convincing that there's a black undercoat under this white. What that was, I'm not sure. Was he trying to prime it before he painted it? Was he some sort of different paint procedure? Because remember, he did this, if Ed in fact painted the white, which he likely did, he did this very early into learning how to do this whole thing.
Yeah. He might have screwed up the black. Maybe he didn't like it.
Right.
What's
it could
really
have only been on the front, which you pointed out. You don't see it on the back, so maybe
what's really interesting about this, and I swear to God, maybe I'm living in an alternate reality, or I dreamt this or something. But I swear I've seen a picture of it black before it was white.
No,
and you guys would know.
That was Charvel, actually. That was during 78.
Okay.
With the Dan lecture.
I was thinking that too.
Okay. That you're with the different neck. Yeah, you're right.
That explains
Take
it.
dragon guitar.
Oh, thank God.
That's basically became the dragon guitar. But it's interesting talking.
Yes.
We're not getting off the subject of the shark too much, but talking about the Charvel I was talking with this again about Alan Garber. It's like the backups. Ed didn't really have that many backups. I mean, I had that wonderful Japanese book of the tour. We had Japan and New York, and Ed just had nothing on that first tour. There's this particular book here. It's just, I highly recommend it. You can find this. It's now cost a fortune.
Awesome book.
It's got pictures of all the gear and everything. Ed had Frankie. He had the white Les Paul that he got later on, and I believe Dallas or somewhere, or New Orleans, I think it was. And he had, oh gosh, I'm already the beer's taking effect. He had, he had the shark. That's what we're talking about. 3 guitars, and only one of them had a vibrato.
Yeah.
I think that he really did that B right away and didn't get it. And of course the Destroyer body with the had the Strat tremolo on, whatever. But he just didn't. I don't think he really gelled with that guitar. You didn't see him with it too much. But so the shark. Getting back to the shark, we do have one great document, and that's when they returned to the whiskey after they did those New Year's Eve shows, and they shot some promotional videos at an empty whiskey. That they did Really Got Me and Running with the Devil. And I think Jamie's Crying, I believe it's the other song they did. But anyways, we have, You Really Got Me, Ed's playing The Shark. Those comments that he made about not being 100% satisfied with it, I think we see something. I'm not sure what's going on here with the pickups. A couple things we see here. They're uncovered, of course, now.
Yes.
No longer covered. So the surround, the mounting ring is missing from the bridge pickup. Now, I don't know whether he got another WDFA or patent pending Gibson and stuck it in there, trying to compensate for that tone loss that he had experienced and hard to compensate for that, or if he just took off of his Super 70s. We don't know.
It could have been a combination of a couple of those things, Chris.
It could have been.
He was a bit of a tinkerer. He didn't, in those years especially, he was wide open on that.
The other thing in that photo that you can see, that's a bit of an anomaly compared to later, is that it still has 3 knobs on it, and he has those standard Gibson, with the metal insert knobs. I mean, there's 3 of them still. I don't know for sure if he had tinkered with the wiring just yet.
I would just, when I read, for instance, I'll go back to your book. In chapter 3 of your book, you interview Edward Van Halen, and the entire chapter essentially is him speaking, and a lot of things come out of his mouth. And we all know, Eddie would say some things here and there, and he might say something to throw people off and this and that, but he was very truthful to you and to Brad when you guys interviewed him. You guys are the source. I truly believe every word he said to you. He respected you guys enough to be very honest with you guys and transparent. He wasn't happy with that guitar when he hacked it up. He was not happy with it. He made no bones about it. There was no wishy-washiness in his story. He messed it up. That's what he said. I just know he had to do, if he kept the guitar and he built it like he did, he had to have done something to make him happy again to some degree. He had to, because he messed it up. So pickup configurations right off the bat, yeah, I'm sure he did that.
Yeah.
Adding, we talked about this before. You said that you guys were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys were saying that metal mass from the hook eye hooks on the bottom, the 2 that he put on there, that adds a considerable amount of weight back to the wood mass that he removed. And perhaps that just adding that weight, not necessarily filling in the void, but just putting a little more mass to it, helped his tone.
You know what? Somebody messaged me a little while ago, and they were talking about the turnbuckles, and they were asking me, if I have any idea what they're for. And I really didn't, I've never really had an answer. And then he said, well, was it to make sure that the guitar wouldn't fall over on the guitar stand? And as soon as he said that, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. If you look at all the photos of the guitar on a stand, it's sitting on the turnbuckle. If you took those out, you wouldn't be able to put on a guitar stand. And at that time, in 77, he was still using the guitar stands on stage. So it's a
interesting,
good solution for me.
I never thought of it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Why he put 2 of them, I don't know. Maybe the small one didn't work and he put a bigger one.
It was probably him originally seeking to do something about what he thought was a tone loss, and then it happened to be a convenient solution to another problem with cutting all that wood out, and there you go.
Yeah, Donny, and plus, as you guys were telling, he didn't have a lot of guitars, so it's not like he could just, and it was he loved that guitar. He loved it when it was whole and solid. He goes in chapter 3. He goes into it specifically saying how big and fat and beautiful it sounded like. A nice Les Paul, I believe is what he said in chapter 3.
And that's a lot of wood he took out. It wasn't a small piece. That's
massive.
Probably
A
fifth of the body.
The funny thing is, I always, like in my younger days and everything, before I started to study this stuff and meet with you guys, I always just thought that he took so much out of the wood. Those turnbuckles were installed to keep it from splitting right down the center. That's what I really did.
the thing I found out when I was doing my replica, because I kept all those measurements as accurate as I could, based off of photographs. I bought the same size turnbuckles, and when I was installing them, I could not tighten them. It was impossible to put tension on them. And then I noticed that every photo you see of him, they're in different positions. They do rattle around. And if you look closely, the eye hooks, like the eyelets, are not touching and pulling. You can see there's space in between. So I realized.
In fact, on one of them, they're actually pushing out to have some. It's going the opposite way.
The longer, the one on the outside bottom.
Yep.
That's new to me.
Yep.
Wow.
I think, like you can see here. Let me get there. See these two in the middle. If I were to tighten, it would actually touch.
Yep.
So if I'd have to shorten them, and then that's not accurate. That's not what Ed's was. Like. So you see this rattles back and forth, and that's pretty much how his was. So I don't know.
He possibly just throw the guitar out of balance? Maybe he made it slightly. I don't believe it would have been enough wood to make it neck heavy, but it could have. Maybe
I think, like I was saying, how he had the Dan Electro poplar necks on ash bodies. He was definitely experimenting with heavy body, light necks.
Those are very light necks, though.
He was very, very conscious of the feel and the weight of the guitar. He wasn't afraid of a heavy body. Les Paul is a heavy body, light neck, mahogany neck. Everybody says mahogany's heavy. It's not. It's light. It's like people get mad when I say it's light, but it's not. So Les Paul is a body heavy guitar. The Ibanez would be to a certain degree because of the massive body compared to the neck. It's a maple neck. So I think when he took that chunk out, he would have noticed right away. Oh my God, it's more neck heavy than it was before. And one thing he said about the Steinberger guitar is that it's neck heavy. He didn't like it for that fact. So I think weight balance was a huge factor, and I don't think he really wanted to draw attention to that because he was experimenting with balance and weight. And everybody was going, oh, you got an ash body because of tone? Sure. If that's what you want to believe, that's why I got it. And even when you think back to the Frankie, when he replaced the body, he took all the parts off the 61 Strat and put it on that ash body. He would have noticed right away. There's a weight difference. I love this. The neck is lighter than it was before.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he bought the body for that purpose or realized after he bought the body, like, hey, this is and the thing is, 61 Strats also were produced with an ash body. If he had gotten an ash body Strat, he might not have gone through some of those changes to actually go and get the body.
They would have been alder by 61. I don't think any Strats would have been ash at that point. Well,
then I know Rory Gallagher's was alder as well. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just I think he realized the weight difference was not just tone, but there was something about weight.
Before we move on, real quick, since we're talking about those turnbuckles and things, for the non-engineering crowd out there watching, what would those turnbuckles have been used for before he put those on? What would he have taken them from?
Could have been like use them for like a fence if you're trying to straighten a fence or like a gate, anywhere where there's like a cable where you're trying to put tension, and over time it loosens, so you want to keep putting tension on. That's what they're for. They're definitely not for a guitar. It's he would have
that's what I always wondered, because he seemed to kind of parse materials from things that were lying around, and those were the two things I was like, I couldn't figure out where it would have came from.
Well, they're quite heavy. They're quite heavy.
Aluminum.
Yeah, they're aluminum.
Pretty light. Like
they are. Okay.
Steel,
okay.
Yeah, I just always wondered where he got them from.
Maybe he went to the hardware store. Maybe they sold them beside the Schwinn bicycle paint.
Yeah. That's true.
I always thought he was just trying to replace weight. That's really what I thought.
It might have been something to do.
If they're light, though, that makes no sense. But then they're non-functional too. They're totally non-functional.
The thing is, what are you going to add there? How you think of him at the time? How is he going to add anything in there besides screwing the original piece of wood that he took out? Something like a turnbuckle would be easy because it's got the eyelets. You can screw it in. You can,
It's funny that you mentioned that. I actually had a theory one time, and I rejected this idea a long time ago. but I thought originally he screwed holes in because he was going to try to replace the wood, and then realized he couldn't do that, and then just strung metal together to keep it. But that's what I kind of thought would have made sense.
How much of a mistake was it, though, Johnny? How off was he?
How, you mean from his original intention?
Yeah.
I think he was trying to make it look clean because, like Chris said, the paint job is really well done. It's crisp, it's clean. He spent a lot of time at it. And unlike the Frankie, I think the Shark guitar and the Star guitar, he spent the most time on. He really sat down. You can tell he enjoyed it. He was really playing around, lost time doing it. So it seems kind of weird that he would do this reckless thing and do a clean paint job. So I really do think he was trying to make it look clean, very similar to the Star body when in '79. I think that's the intention. And that's why I go back to Charvel and wonder if Eddie and Charvel had a conversation about doing that to the Ibanez, and that's what developed later with the Star guitar.
Yeah,
But
when you said that earlier, Johnny, it made me think, because some of those things, as we know from building guitars, some of those things you need to do and the tools you need to do that job, he may have gone to Charvel and asked them to do it with him standing there, or asked to use their bandsaw or whatever tools, you know?
Yeah. It's
one thing.
The fact that he said that they didn't have time to do it made me think that. And where did he get the idea? Why did it's like not something that he thought about for a long time. Like it popped into his head. Boom. He went home, grabbed the drill press. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, I screwed up. Like it was a spontaneous thing. He's always said it was spontaneous and he regretted it. So it's like if somebody puts a bug in your ear, hey, jump off that cliff. Okay, it's fun. Boom.
Johnny, when I hear you saying that, at first I'm saying, well, he wouldn't do that. But then, he did it with an ES335 and a belt sander and wore a hole right through the sucker. So, yes, he would.
Yeah, he would.
Oh, believe me, I saw so many things that were just it's the vintage guitar collector's house of horrors.
It's like that kid in Toy Story, the neighbor with all the goofy toys, right?
Oh, yes. That's exactly who he's like.
Eddie's sitting up in heaven right now, looking down on us, laughing. We're still talking about the turnbuckles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
He would be like,
we want to know, man.
Eddie's probably laughing, saying, "I never called it the Shark." So that's probably something. He's probably laughing, and that's the title it's been given over time.
Hey, Chris, you keep showing a guitar there, but you won't show us a guitar. What do you got there? Let's see it, man.
About the neck on the Destroyer. It's a phenomenal setting neck. And I think that's another reason why Ed loved that guitar so much. And I think that's a big reason why Ed got that Boogie Body's neck.
Gotcha.
Frankie in the dimensions that he did, because it's slim, and it's pretty flat, and it's nice and wide. And I think that's, it's just so much of what.
That's beautiful, man.
Why he used it so much on the first album.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really it's quite a sophisticated neck for the time. I mean, it was really a prototypical shred neck.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful, Donny.
These necks are 7 pieces of wood, maybe 8 if you count the fretboard. So it's 3 pieces this way, multi-laminate. Wow. And the reason for that is a couple reasons. One, to get that headstock angle, instead of having to use a super thick piece of wood, you just take normal, maybe 1-inch thick wood, turn it on its side, glue 3 pieces, and you got a big block.
Well, they've been doing that. That's something they morphed into the Wizard neck, Ibanez, right?
Right.
And the Wizard 2, that's sort of their prototype.
I'm not sure if Ibanez came up with this concept, but I know that they're an early example that I know of using this sort of multi-laminate. And it's a great manufacturing choice because it makes the material sourcing easier. You don't have to get super thick, wide blanks. It's quarter sawn by definition because you're taking that flat sawn wood and turning it up. Mm-hmm. So now you have 3 pieces of quarter sawn wood glued together for a beautiful, solid piece. And then
stability.
You have wings on either side. You have a little plastic headstock overlay, really thin. That's inlaid pearloid plastic, and then you've got this heel cap because the neck itself is not thick enough to yield this heel. So basically, it goes. if you see where that joint is, that's the depth of the neck pocket. So that glues in, and once the neck is glued in, this piece glues over it, and then you carve it all in place.
Wow.
So those are just a few things I've learned. Alan Garber is a rock star when it comes to the history of these guitars. When I set out to develop my replica kit in 2017, his information that he laid out I couldn't have done it without everything he did, because he has his own destroyer that he took apart and took pictures and documented every little detail, and that was my springboard for coming up with something like this, which is an exact copy of that one from 1975, just with Ed's flair.
Speaking of Alan Garber, he just did an interview on Doug Steele's channel.
That's awesome.
It's absolutely a fantastic interview. You guys should check that out.
Alan is a nut, and I love everything he does.
Yeah.
Ibanez, those guitars, the Ibanez and Greco were made by Fuji Gengaki, and that's really, obviously they made a lot of guitars for Ibanez. They made guitars for lots of companies, and there was a lot of crossover and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. This is what kills me. Okay, EVH does the Shark, right? And they come out with it a few years ago and everything like that. And it's all, EVH is all part of the larger FMIC family. You know what Fender Japan is? Fuji Gengaki. Why? It would have been so great if they would have gone back to Fuji Gengaki and had them make the Shark, because they made the original Destroyer. He said, "Oh, talk about a mystical."
Yeah. Makes sense, Chris. Yes, it does.
Probably played into it and everything like that. But man, if they ever decide to do a really 100% authentic Shark replica, like they did with Frankie and they did with the 78, and hopefully they're doing with the 5150 and like they did with the Bumblebee, man, they should have the guys at Fuji Gengaki make the buck. There's still got some of the original guys there, that did the original Destroyers, and that would just be aces.
That would be too cool, man.
Yeah.
That would be too cool.
So continuing on with the timeline, we had the whiskey, and then not too long after that. Now, this is, I guess, the interesting thing is we don't have a whole lot of photos. We do know that Ed goes over to Japan. We have that wonderful Japanese book with all these photos of Ed with the Destroyer when they go to Japan. There's this great photo here, and already he's changing the guitar. It's now got this covered pickup with a white surround.
Yep.
Still has 3 knobs. 3 metal cover top hat knobs are on there. Mm-hmm. And if you look closely, you'll notice this is one thing I hadn't actually noticed until recently, but it's the plate that it's mounted on is actually the output jack. It's the plastic output jack.
So I was going to mention that, Chris, if I could jump in. Yeah. Ed had a bunch of those jack plates, especially in '79. He had them all over the Frankenstrat. 2 of them for the controls, 2 for the strap to screw it on. I think they were brass output jacks from Charvel, because one of the first things Charvel ever offered were brass output jacks, and they had them in brass, natural brass, and black. And the reason I say that it's got to be one of those is because they're actually slightly larger in the overall and the screw spacing than the typical jack plate. And when I basically 3D scan this thing, you try to put a regular Les Paul jack plate on there, and the screws just don't quite reach the wood. But I've gotten some new old stock Charvel, some jack plates that are exactly like that he would have gotten, and they fit beautifully, and they're metal. So they're not, it's not going to break or snap or anything like that. So that's
bent one.
Well, that one. So yeah, later on he took that. That was the actual jack plate off of the Destroyer, the original plastic, because it's a 2-ply white black, and it's rectangular, and one side was cracked, and like you said, he bent it so it would reach the. Chris has got the picture.
Let's see that picture. Yep.
So you can see how it's rectangular, even though it's cracked. You can see the rectangular shape, and you could also just quite make out the white from the 2-ply jack plate. I'll show you mine real quick on my white Destroyer. My original Destroyer doesn't have the original plate, but so it looks like that, and it's rectangular because this is quite a thin body, and it's 2-ply white and black. And it's interesting because Ibanez used a lot of 2-ply plastic for the jack plate, for the truss rod cover, and for this cover plate. And the cover plate's just black, but they just source the same material. And what's interesting about the cover plate is that it's actually beveled like a pickguard would be from the underside. So it slots in there really nicely. And the bottom of it's actually white.
That's very custom.
There are pictures out there you can find of destroyers for sale where they'll show the jack plate and you can see that detail.
Very cool, dude.
Cool.
Well, the interesting thing is, Ed's just starting to really fiddle with the guitar on that those first early dates on the '78 tour. I found this photo. I'm not sure where it is, but now it's like he's got the same pants. The middle knob is now missing. It's still got the white chrome covered pickup.
Yep.
But he's now taken that middle knob off. So somewhere along the line, he's probably rewired it. So it's just a direct connection, gets through the tone control and everything. But it's like, I think that tone's bothering him. He's trying to find ways to do it. It's like, gosh, maybe if I take that tone control on the circuit, maybe that will give it some balls. We have that famous photo in the Japanese thing again, which just shows the guitar so nicely. And again, this isn't.
Oh, Chris, that's a beautiful photograph, bro.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Oh, dude.
That's just, again, it's got the chrome covered white pickup. I'm not sure which pickup it is. He put another Super 70 in there, but then why does it have a white surround? I don't know what he was using. I don't even know if Ed knows what he was using.
I think it's reasonable to assume that after he cut it up, it was just the Wild West for pickups. He was trying all sorts of different things to recapture what he had and never quite got there. Yeah.
And the other thing about that Japanese tour is they go to a bunch of music stores, and there's this picture of Alex, and it's like
that's awesome.
Playing a Japanese destroyer. Why didn't Ed buy that?
Right.
I know, like when I got my Greco, I beat Matt Bruck out by 2 minutes. Ed was still, up to 2009, 2010, he was still shopping for, those Fujigangaki destroyers, the floors. Where did he buy it? I mean, I know why. It's because, they still were pretty damn broke, so, but there would have been a perfect guitar. And there's Alex posing with the thing. Why didn't Ed get that? In the last couple songs of the set. Instead he comes back, or he gets that white Les Paul from New Orleans in April. Thanks, Alan, for the date up on that. But it's just crazy, because he's basically doing the whole set with Frankie, doing the last couple songs, after Eruption with a stop tailpiece guitar. And he's got some frustration going on. So anyways, then, it starts to disappear as the '78 tour goes on. You see it less and less. And I think even when I saw them open for Black Sabbath, I think it was the Frankenstein the whole show, as I recall. I don't recall seeing another guitar, at the very end. Even after doing Eruption, I think he still just played Frankie, and I think partially because they had to do a very quick set, and get off the stage. But in the shot, they were crazy. Like, it's such a letdown when Black Sabbath came on. Like, the energy just got sucked out of the room. Even though Black Sabbath was great, but Van Halen just kicked out.
Yeah.
Anyways, then we get to, right after that, I saw the last show, San Diego. They finish up and they go right into the studio to start recording Van Halen. And we see Frankie. We see Start Again, and it's the Niels Lozower stage Sunset Sound shots, which everybody knows and loves. There it is. And hey, now it's got an open coil, uncovered white pickup and an uncovered black pickup. And I think from this point onwards, those pickups stay on there. And through detailed shots and through what you can see now, you can get a nice, good close-up look at the pickups. And it looks like it's one of Ed's old Mighty Mites because there's no hole in the bobbins. They're just flat plastic all the way across. Let's see if I can find a photo of a Mighty Mite here.
Yeah, we debated for a long time on if we, thought it was a DiMarzio or a Mighty Mite, and that exact picture, I think that's from around 2015. Am I correct?
Yeah, we also, Kevin's camera shots has very high detail stuff. It's not big, so we can't blow it up like it's on a digital photo here. But the shots that we did in 2013 for Guitar Aficionado, you can see the hex, the hex plugs.
Right.
And but there's no holes in the bobbins. And then, but the neck pickup has the hex but it has the holes. You can't really see it here, unfortunately, the contrast that well, but if you really kind of see the holes on either side of with the IE, and then the one between the E and the A there, you can see a hole there. That's much better. You can see the hole between the E and the A there, much better. So I think it's DiMarzio of some sort, but with black coils as opposed to the usual cream-colored coil. And those seem to be the pickups that are in those, in basically from that early '79 or late '78, whenever Slowzor took those Sunset Sound shots, and it seems to stay like that from then on. So Ed seemed to find a combination that finally worked for him. And this is probably the setup that he used on Van Halen 2, theorized but not confirmed. Plausible, but not confirmed that he used it on Out of Love Again, and also Dance the Night Away, and what was the other song? Bounce around here on my iPad. Women in Love. So it's theorized.
I've never heard the theory about Women in Love, which is interesting when I hear it, because having covered that song.
The main crux of the song, not the
Right. The main part of the song. But I can say that Dance the Night Away, from what I have heard from an alternate take, unless he swapped guitars between the two takes, which is possible. Actually, I'm sorry. The alternate take was an alternate vocal take. The guitar take was the same. The video is unfortunately no longer on YouTube, but you could hear, instead of it fading out, you could hear the whole outro. And at the very end, as they're kind of coming to a stop and slowing down, you can hear him do a little trim dive and come back up on Dance the Night Away. So unless he's doing something that I can't fathom with his left hand to make it sound like a trim dive, that's got to be the Frank. But I totally agree about Out of Love Again. And now that you've mentioned the main track of Women in Love, it makes me think I want to go back and listen to that, because that's plausible to me.
The funny thing about Dance the Night Away, though, I'll say this the other day. I've never played that song in my life. I will admit, even though I play many Van Halen songs. And the other day, I was just looking around, getting ready for this thing. I was playing on my Greco, and I just played it. I hit that E and that suspension, and I played it. And then it's like, it just came to me comfortably and naturally. It's weird,
I love that song. That's one of my favorite songs, let alone Van Halen songs. I'll play that all day.
Yeah, me too.
Learn that song or whatever, and just the other day I was just working around with that thing and just playing all that Van Halen one stuff that I know was done with that guitar, and then all of a sudden I just go, oh, well, that sounds nice. Like, wow, hey, I didn't love. Yeah, Dance the Night Away. Wow, I'm playing it. You know.
There you go.
Right on.
You know me. Yeah, but it was funny just because it sounded right. It just sounded, even though I don't have a good trunk cut out of it, but it still sounded. It had the right balls and the right punch and the harmonic crispiness to it, and everything. And it was just, I thought maybe there's some credence to that, but who knows. But anyways.
My buddy Logan in the chat points out that a great point for Out of Love Again is the huge bends in the solo, which twofold. The shorter scale length of the Destroyer helps with larger bends, and the fact that it's a stop tailpiece makes it so you're pretty much not going to bend the trim. Right. So you can get those big bends easier on that than you could the Frank.
I don't think Eddie ever used to use the tuners to dive down, did he?
I was going to say, I don't think I've seen him play in the Roth era. I saw him several times. I never saw him grab a neck, grab the body, and wrench it.
Well, yeah, either that.
I've never seen him do that either.
I mean, if he would have ever done that, it would have been before the invention of the locking nut, though, too. It would have been pre-Floyd.
Well, and the Dance the Night Away, if that's where you're going with that, the trim dive at the end of that is he's on a chord. So even if he was trying,
so that's every string going down.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he simply just held the cord and let his hand go down the neck slightly?
No, because it kind of dips down and comes back up. I wish I could post it for you guys, but the video is not on YouTube anymore. It was called Dance the Night Away Alternate Take, and the guitar and the drums, and I presume the bass, though you can't really hear it, are all identical, but it was an alternate vocal take. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe like half of a verse was what we got in the final song from that take, and then the rest of it wasn't used. It was maybe like a first or second take or something like that.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
Wow.
So I just want to throw up this photo. It's just a simple photo. This Lozo shot of him with the Frank,
It's always a great shot.
79, man, taking over the world, and there is Ed with the.
Tony still has that picture above his bed.
Yeah.
On the ceiling.
Yeah. And it says objects in mirror are larger than their mirror.
There you go.
And of course, then we get to, later on, we get to 1980, pink jumpsuit, guitar collection, it's in there.
Oh, yeah.
Shape,
Yeah.
as it was in those stage Sunset Sound things. And of course, we have, the Women in First Session.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, this shot, everybody knows this shot.
Yeah.
And the gold Tunematic's still there. And that's, except, it does take it out on tour, 1980, at that tour. And, basically it semi-vanishes, until we see it in a few guitar collection things like, the guitar magazines have done. The harmonica bridge pops up after that. And it's just funny because it's become so famous for this big harmonica bridge that's on there. But that was such an after the heyday of the Shark,
Yeah.
But it's because we have those more detailed photos, the guitar collection photos that start to appear in the mid 80s in Japanese guitar magazines. We have the centerfold, in Guitar World, of it, and the harmonica bridges there and everything. So people start to look at this as the reference, and of course now we have the brass piece on there too. The brass color, opposed to the black colored toggle switch on there. And that,
I believe that brass jack is another one of those oversized Charvels, because if you look, it does look quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, and it does fit to the screw holes much better too. So that was the other thing, because I think I saw something where there was something where it didn't quite fit or whatever, and it was like I think he tried something else, but I couldn't find that photo again. But it was kind of like he tried like a smaller one or something, it just didn't work. But
I want to say something just before I forget. Charles was talking about how the guitar changed after he altered it. He also put the brass nut in, which would have changed the sound quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And he never swapped it out and put a plastic one or a bone back in. He always just kept the brass nut in. I don't know. He somehow didn't look at that part, but that I think would have changed the sound. Obviously would have changed the sound.
Oh yeah, sure it would have. Absolutely. Oh, Chris, hold that up again. Let me see that again. So this is a brass nut, what we're looking at right here.
Gibson size brass nut. So I got these. Yeah, it was so funny to look back at this stuff, because not that I know I did Van Halen, but I was on a similar path as the guy. He was just a 15-year-old kid. So I bought these up at Stars Guitars up in San Francisco for $1 a piece.
Whoa.
But that 65 ST that I had, the one that I put I put the brass, gold Tunematic on, and I bought these brass nuts to put in there. And it was actually it was Blue Guitar Workshop down in San Diego. I went to get it refretted, and I said, I wanted you to put this brass nut in there, and the guy wouldn't do it. He said, you're not going to want that. I'm going to put a bone nut in there.
Oh, that's, what? He was probably not able to do the brass nut properly, and so he was just...
Yeah, putting out the slots on the brass.
Yeah.
It's definitely a pain. But making a bone nut's definitely a lot easier than making a brass nut. My Destroyer, when I got it, had a couple very minor modifications that I reverted to the best of my ability without original parts, but it had a brass nut. And it makes me wonder, because it's a little bit after, as it's 75 pre-serial, but it's not that first batch with the different heel cap and the original truss rod cover. But I wonder if that's factory, because I've seen a lot of Ibanez Destroyers that look fairly untouched having brass nuts, though Ed's would have been bone when he got it, as we've seen from pictures.
Interesting. What, just out of curiosity, what's a Destroyer going for now? Used. What are they going for? Just out of curiosity.
An early 75, I will say incredibly rare, because it was first batch. It had all the same unique specs as Ed's, like the heel that I just mentioned. It recently, I think it sold for $10,500, something wild like that. They're really skyrocketing.
We're going for obscene prices on Reverb nowadays. I think I paid about $1,000 for my Greco, and Grecos are now $5,000, $6,000.
Wow.
Man.
And
Wow.
Ibanez is just, you name it.
Wow, Chris.
Kind of goes for all the Ibanez Karina series stuff, though. I'm just kicking myself. So you had that B that I mentioned. I had to clean off a little B, not quote unquote Karina, not actually Karina. San Ash, Rock and Roll Senior. I swapped it with my friend Robert to do a leather covering on the Strat because he does this wonderful tooled leather stuff and whatever. And he had his eye on that, so I brought it down and took it. But yeah, those are up there in multi-thousands now.
Wow.
They used to be dirt cheap. Like I said, when I got mine, I got it from Norman, sitting around with another one for 2 years, $250.
Wow.
And I remember at the same time I saw one of those modern Ibanez's, like guitar in Sherman Oaks, and it was like $200, and it was mint, and I just didn't buy it because I said I've already got the B, and I've got too many dual humbucker guitars, and I'm now kicking myself that I didn't go drop that money. That was that chunk change.
Chris, it's so funny for people in the chat who don't realize Chris is a little bit older than me, and so he was there in the mid-'70s doing what I did in the mid-'80s, basically. And he's naming off places that he's been, guitar stores, clubs. They're not there anymore for the most part. And they are quite literally the foundation of guitar lore that we all talk about. And he was there and he experienced it. And I'm going to give you a shout out. Your writing in Guitar World magazine was the one of, and there were not many in those days, Chris. There were not many that you could trust and count on. But you and Brad, Steve Rosen, back in those days, you were the boys, man. You were the boys, and all the people who wanted to know the truth and get the real facts, they knew who to read and who to trust. And I just want to give you a shout out, man. I remember. And I got to give you another shout out. In 2012, you wrote an article in Guitar World magazine called "Like Father, Like Son," and it is quite literally the premier introduction to Wolfgang as an artist. The way that you portray him and Eddie. See, they didn't just have a father and son relationship. They treated each other like peers.
Well, they were bandmates.
There you go. And the respect that Eddie, the way when Eddie talked about Wolfgang, it was like he was talking about a musician who was his equal. Because I think Eddie actually thought, I honestly get a feeling when I read a lot of the writing, especially what you and Brad wrote, that he considered Wolfgang almost more gifted than him in many ways.
I think he did. I think it was genuine. We're kind of talking the sidebar here. Ed kind of has this reputation for being a bullshitter. I think he maybe didn't remember details as distinctly as he could have, or he may not have known certain technical things as well as he could have.
Yeah.
He wasn't really a bullshitter.
Yeah.
The thing about Wolfgang, like when he told, I was as skeptical as anybody. Like I'd done my first interview with Ed in '94 and talked to him a little bit here and there on and off. And then, I started really getting the ball rolling with the Guitar World stuff in 2006. And unfortunately, he was still drinking a lot. But that's when he told me that, hey, Wolfgang's, he's a new player now. He's 15.
Yeah.
Maybe he was 14, actually. But let's see. One, so that's 15 was 15, basically. I thought, gosh, he's drunkers and just a loving father thing, but it was a real genuine, wow, this kid's really got talent, and he's just really developed this whole thing. And I that whole thing, because it started with balance, when Wolfgang was like 3, I interviewed him, and I saw a little Wolfgang running around, and Ed was already dreaming of making music. Yeah. Didn't want to push it on him, didn't want to be Tiger Dad, but he really, I could just tell, just the look in his face, and the one of his voice said, really wanted nothing more than to make music with his son. And
Yeah.
The Wolfgang just delivered the goods, and he was the real deal. And poor kid, gosh, he went through so much skepticism, know, and I just remember all the critics, and it was just like, and I remember seeing them at that show at Meadowlands, where we're at Through the Monitor, the show, and it was a bit of a wreck, but Wolfgang was doing the job, you know, and doing it well.
Yes, he was.
He earned that place. I mean,
Yes,
it was like, yeah, he's had kids, so he's got an advantage there, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm just covering up for my kid. It wasn't like, sorry, but Linda McCartney down in the house mix, you know.
Look, he was filling massive shoes. The fact that kid, and he was a kid, came in there and filled those shoes and did the job he did, it was almost like Eddie Van Halen was his father.
A lot of pressure, and it's
Almost.
that he's so defensive now. You know, we got to give it to him because he took an awful lot of shit.
Yeah.
Radio stations were making fun of him in just harsh ways. And it was cruel to do that to, you know, anyone, let alone a kid. You know, thank you, but you know, I'll say I'm just a guitar geek. I mean, I've always been a guitar geek. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes like anybody else does. I have the wrong impressions. I've been fed a lot of the same stuff, you know, rumors and misinformation. I believe a lot of the mess, and it's a constant process. You know, it's even with these guitars I've had. It's still an ongoing thing. You know, stuff may be disproven, and we may find something else new. And I'm fully accepting to that. And if someone wants to say I'm full of shit, then bring it. You know, and bring your evidence, bring the photo or whatever. You know, I don't want to have just the hearsay though. I just worry, you know, we want the facts, man. You know, we're Joe Fire.
Sure, absolutely, man. You're an excellent storyteller. That's what you do. You tell wonderful stories. In all of the interviews that I've ever read from you, you're just telling great stories. Yeah, it's been a great ride with you, Chris. I remember you back from I saw you in the club, you know, at the Motley Crue signing party when Nikki and what was her name? You know, she was throwing the party.
I can't remember.
I can't think of it off the top of my head either. Anyway. You guys were sitting at that table in about 5 minutes. Now I'll say 10 minutes before that Nikki and I wish I could remember her name. It's going to come to me right after the show. And George, the bouncer, came up to your table. He had come up to me maybe 10 minutes before that and said, hey, look, we need more chairs. We got to get more seating. What are we going to do? And I told him, I said, look, man, me and George, that bouncer who was standing at your table, we had already gone to the Roxy and the Rainbow and got every extra chair they had. There wasn't going to be no more chairs. There was no more seating. And Louie was at the bar, and I was standing by the bar. I was involved in that. You just didn't see me. And Louie, out of his mouth, Chris, I swear, he says, look, he looks at me, he goes, we don't make people get up, and we don't play musical chairs at the Whiskey A Go-Go. They've got drinks. They've been served. They're keeping their chairs.
Well, I had the record label, you know, bar tab.
Yes. Thank you. You had a bar tab with the man. So, and you know, Louie, you know him. You remember him back in the day. The fact that I'm sitting here on a show with you right now talking about that is flipping priceless for me, Chris. Priceless, brother.
I was trying so hard to sign Motley Crue at Boardwalk, you know.
Yeah.
I was like telling Neil Bogart, I was telling, I can't remember the guy's name now, who's the A&R guy. But Bruce Bird.
Yes.
We've got to sign these guys. We got to get them, you know. And they were kind of like, whatever. They couldn't get them out to the club to go see them and everything. And it just bummed me out when it was Tom Zutaut who beat me to the punch. You know, I wasn't an A&R guy. I was just the guy doing singles promotion.
Yeah. It's funny because you got to do with Van Halen what I got to do with Motley Crue. And it's just cool, Chris. It's just a pleasure to be on here with you and to get to interact with all of you guys. I know the chat absolutely just loves this. It's priceless, you guys.
Yeah, anytime, you know, we'll come back and do this discussion. Let's talk about the shark. You know.
Hey, I don't go in the water anymore, guys. I really don't.
Heat a grill show.
Yeah, we'll do a grill show next. The pound cake.
We got some trivia coming up, you guys.
I did want to show the photo of the here's the black Charvel with the
That's the one I was thinking of earlier.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the one that became the dragon snake.
Yep.
And of course, I think a lot of us. Well, here we go. There's the dragon snake.
Oh.
It became.
Wow. Wow.
Those pictures you guys took of that guitar when you started releasing some outtakes on Instagram, I reached out to you and we talked about it a bit. But that was the first time that I know of that we've ever been able to clearly see the side dots on that neck. Because it's always been thought it was a Grover built Charvel neck, so it should have brass dots because that's what he did on pre-production necks. However, it was right in that transition when Grover took over. Couldn't make necks yet. That's a Boogie Body's neck, so it's got black side dots, and that picture helped tie all that together.
Ah, nice.
Wow.
This is the most recent photo we have from Wolfgang.
Yeah.
Instagram feed, which this was really nice for seeing the, the Allen key pegs, the plugs in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty accurate as far as the paint color too, is it? Because that's a modern, like a digital camera.
Yeah.
Hold that up again, Chris.
At least the version I downloaded is a little blown out. So
Yeah, it's got an Instagram filter, so that probably blows it out a bit. But
somebody I saw earlier, somebody had asked about if it looked brown in person, and it didn't really look brown to me. I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those things.
Some stage shots, it looks like it's purplish brown. Yeah.
Yeah, but no,
stage lighting can throw everything off.
Yeah.
I mean, I my photos I've taken, and I always, gosh, those colored gels, man, it makes it so hard sometimes to focus, especially red. I mean, have those gels there, man. It throws your autofocus off, and even just trying to focus by manually is really tough.
I mean, even black. You guys remember the discussions everybody's had about the Circles guitar?
Yeah,
is it black? Is it purple?
Yeah.
Is it blue?
I think because seeing the Rude guitar, I saw that. Again, I went up there in 2013. That's black, black and white. So, and I don't know for sure, but I think Rude and Circles were painted pretty much neck and it's not side by side like consecutively or something. So.
Well, there is a picture of not to get too far off topic, but there is a picture at the pre-tour kind of rehearsals for Fair Warning where the Circles is completed and painted, but there's no Rude yet. There's a different 2-inch thick mahogany guitar that is not the Rude, but was an earlier one, the 1981. So they were painted in near succession and almost certainly with the same paints, but not one after, like not immediately beside each other.
Mm-hmm.
What else with the chart? Well, let's mention that the tuning keys, that's half gold, 3 gold, and 3 chrome on there. It's very rare asterisk tuners. This is really the completest. The people who have big stacks thing. It's like you probably have about the rarest Ibanez tuners on there.
Those about the tuners. There is discussion because there are shallower double tab tuners that have the asterisk logo for the Japanese market. However, I don't believe that's what they are. And the reason I say that is because he had other necks, or what at the time the Dan Electro neck, but later his 58 Les Paul that he brought on tour had the other half of each set of what makes up the Shark. So the reason I know this is because if you look at the buttons on the gold tuners on the Shark, the buttons are huge. They're large button tuners. That's used in a case where you have a 3x3 situation, and the buttons can be larger. They're not going to crowd each other. So what Ed did, exactly. So Ed bought a set of 3x3 gold tuners, and he had a set of 6-in-line chrome tuners. He used, I think what happened is he actually put the tuners on the Dan Electro neck at the time, and he needed 3x3. So he was able to use the treble side of the gold tuners and 3 of the 6 bass side 6-in-line chrome tuners. That leaves him with 3 bass side chrome tuners and 3 bass side gold tuners. So the Shark basically got what was left after combining those sets to make the Dan Electro neck work, since it was 3x3. And then of course later on when you see the 58 come out on tour, it has those same half of the set of the Shark. And so for that reason, I believe that they're actual branded shallers because we've seen those other tuners and they're not asterisk tuners, though those do exist and they're the same tuner with a different cap on it.
pretty cool. Again, solving problems, right? That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
For.
Nice.
You guys are geniuses.
One thing I want to show, Chris was showing all those cool photos. My mock-up that I was talking about. One thing about the paint job that always kind of puzzled me was he's got stripes everywhere on the front, the back. Even the back is complicated compared to some of the other guitars that he painted that tended to be a little simplified on the back. You know, the back of the neck. There's one spot on the front where the route is, and he didn't really put a whole lot there. And I thought maybe he was intending to put the pick guard back on. But then between the pickups, he's put tape there. And so I thought maybe he was intending to cut that little flap and put the white pick guard back on. So I thought, well, this I did just the other day, so it's not 100% accurate, but this is what I think his initial idea was. So this is all clean in here. I think that's what he wanted. And then the Super 70 pickups, right? Because he's not thinking there's going to be anything wrong, right?
Right.
And then the white pick guard. And if you kind of look at that, that matches really well with the Frankie at the time.
Yep.
That's pretty
cool. How many knobs do you have on there? Do you have 2? I'm trying to look.
Yeah, it's recent. It's also got the harmonica bridge in there. So it's not but that's just an idea of what I like doing stuff like that because it helps.
That's awesome.
You know,
that's really
try to visualize maybe what he was doing or what he was thinking about, right? And
once it looks like it needed, you know,
it's kind of cool.
He, you know, he's known for when he was modding these guitars for using chunks of pick guards anyway. I was surprised there was no chunk of a pick guard on that guitar.
It was kind of before he really did that. I mean, I think because it turned out the way it did with the leaving the holes and leaving the trench where the route is for the wire to the selector switch, I think that maybe encouraged him with the Frankie to leave the pick guard off in 79 and leave it rough looking. You know, I think he kind of realized it actually does look kind of cool where it's rough. You see the raw edges, you see the wires. He actually put the switch back in to show wires. It didn't do anything. It wasn't even hooked up.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, it was part of a development. You know, the Frankie, when it was black and white, he was really trying to make it look nice. That was him working hard, making something look nice. He put the nice pick guard. He had to make the pick guard. He couldn't get one with just one humbucker at the time, so he had to make it. Same with that one, trying to make it look nice. He did a really good job with the paint job. And I think, you know, with the cutout, it kind of screwed up for him a little bit. But then he realized, hey, you know, it actually does look kind of cool this way.
Very cool, dude. Very cool.
Yeah, that mock-up was neat. That's cool.
I'll put that on my Instagram later.
That was neat.
That's really cool.
Took the soldering gun and tried to melt the edge to clean up the edge of it and everything. That's just so cool. That's so cool.
I did want to mention if someone asking if the Dragon Snake was stolen. It was not stolen. It's still there. 5150. Believe me, that thing is it's you know under lock and key. It's valued. You know, we had that photo that I showed. That was taken, you know, in 2013. So it still has that neck on there, like we talked about earlier. You know, so it's alive and well. I mean, it's not entirely put back together. That's the back of it.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful.
And those, by the way, 3 of those tuners are probably half of the shark tuners that came off of the finally made it to that neck. And that neck was originally the Bumblebee neck.
Yes. Donny, I think I knew that from you actually. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Those we did look into this, and those are not the other. Neither of those sets are 2-tab. So
reversed, so they are like a 3 and 3.
Right.
Wow.
That's why we originally thought that. I think that picture wasn't around yet, so we couldn't quite make out if there were 1 or 2 tabs, which is why we theorized maybe that's where it ended up.
Some of the stuff they didn't let us print the back. We took a picture of the back of the shark, and they decided afterwards, let's not do that because of you guys. Out there.
Come on, you gotta give us copies of those photos someday.
You know, I know Kevin has the high res of them. I'll talk to him about that. So, but I just remember when we went to print it, I remember Matt said let's not do the back of the shark.
Wow.
Back when they were doing the the EVH version of it. So
that's what made me want to do the replica. I had that centerfold at the front, And I thought one day, if I ever find a picture of the back, that's when I'm going to do it. And then I came across one on the internet, blurry, but it was good enough I could see the stripes.
Very cool. I'm pushing more Japanese guitar books, and Guitar Man, the book, guitars. Let's see if I can find it. There is a picture of the back of it. Biggest picture.
That's a great book. I've got a scan of that David Allen Wright uploaded on his page.
Like we actually have two different versions of the
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
there, and
You know, those Japanese gearheads were definitely way ahead of their time taking all these photos.
oh, it was just in their DNA. Like I said, like when I went to the ESP, the museum at ESG Guitars there in Shibuya, they have all those vintage guitars as well as all those custom ESPs. But all those the president of ESP, which is also Edwards and a bunch of other companies, he bought all these vintage guitars so they could take them apart and look at them under a microscope and all the knockoffs of them. God bless them, because the American companies weren't going like, well, how did we used to make these? Why were these considered so good? They were like out there.
They just make them as cheap as they can, to make them look kind of right. But yeah, the Japanese have always paid very close attention to those details.
Yeah, that's like Tony with the old Baywatch episodes.
Replicate those bikinis, man. Those swimsuits, man. Where was I know there's a photo in here at the back of it, but I could spend all night going for this. Get distracted.
Real quick, Keith isn't. While you're looking for that, Keith is in the chat. He mentioned the middle pickup in the Frankenstrat and the rhinestone that went in. He mentions the mirror. The mirror actually came off first while the telly pickup was still in, and then the rhinestone came much later.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the wood paneling shoot. There are pictures of Frankenstrat from that shoot too.
Yeah, there's actually another black and white. Oops, the earlier black and white shot of it to its back.
Oh, man.
Definitely worth the price of admission for guitar geeks out there who really want to see all the details.
Man.
Of course, you have the original Franken right there.
Oh, yes.
That's a good picture. But yeah, that's this stuff is out there. It's great that it's always got 1,000 words.
There's so many pictures from this book and a couple others in particular. You'll find really low res versions of them online. I know they exist, but no one's gone through and actually done a high res scan of all of them. I have one from, like I said, David Allen Wright did a scan of his copy, but the scan is it's high res, but it's kind of warbly. It's still very useful, but it's amazing. These books that have been around for quite a long time now have all these answers to these questions, but it's just no one's digitized them in a way and publicized them in a way to point them out.
Donny, are you offering that service?
If I can get a copy, I would love to do it. But if I get a copy, I have to be able to tear it apart to make legitimate scans. If you know what I mean. Yeah. So that's the downside.
I've got a good book of photos from David Allen Greer, but it's not quite the same as what you're talking about.
A little off topic, but still Van Halen related. And again, in that Japanese tour book, there's those photos of Ed here on the 78 tour, especially the Echoplexes. You see the Boss graphic equalizers. You see this MXR pedal that's in the pocket, and the inside the Echoplex. People have prophesized for years that it's a micro amp, and that's what Ed used for me. And it's actually, I can definitively say it's a MX noise gate line driver for several reasons. One, it has the strip logo. The micro amp always had a block logo. And this picture is so clear that you can actually see it says threshold on the one knob, not gain, not speed, so it's not a phase 90 either. And then also you can barely make out the little XLR jack on the side. So that question has been answered. It's noise gate line driver, sure Rudy just had it in there for when they were playing places and they were getting that, going on. And it's like, I gotta put this in.
That's excellent, buddy.
Info is out there. You just gotta look for it. It's a treasure hunt,
But yeah, as we're talking about this, I'm looking through the scan and I'm seeing and again, a bit off topic, the Frank in 79 in Japan, where it's got all the duct tape and stuff and the wires in the route. I had accepted for a while that it was 2 pots. There's the volume pot and then a second one without a knob. But for a while, we toyed with the idea of that being a MIDI toggle switch. And I was kind of undecided. But I mean, right here, clear as day, you see the split shaft in the pot. So these, there are answers to these questions out there. It's just about finding them.
Doing something.
Everybody's Japanese books, got to pay a fortune for them, but they've got the clarity in there. It's better than this. You can go all day on the internet and they do these low res scans of these things. And they just don't tell you everything you need to know. They just be cheap and get it on the internet for 5 books. Everyone see it's there.
Yeah, very cool. My goodness.
One other one, I don't think we brought up about the construction of the destroyer. Did we bring up about the pancake or the layers and everything?
Yeah, we briefly talked about the neck construction, but we didn't talk about the pancake. No, so these were actually just like the neck, were multi-piece necks. These are multi-piece bodies, which is not atypical, but this is quite a few pieces. Mine is 6 pieces. I've seen as much as 8. It depends. Chris had mentioned that Sen was used in sort of small furniture pieces. And if you look very closely there on Chris's, you can see the seam right down the middle. And that's because they weren't thick enough. They couldn't get pieces thick enough to make the full, and the destroyer body is only 1.5 inches. It's not a full 1 3/4.
Wow. You can see that just as clear as day, can't you?
Yeah. And they're usually, 2 to 4 pieces wide. So if you think that they're 2 pieces thick and 2 to 4 wide, you're talking 4 to 8 pieces of wood to make that body.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It'd be impossible to make it out of 1 piece. It's just big.
Sen is a rather small tree. It's not really like a big, huge, like American lumber.
They're tall too, right? They're supposed to be tall.
What was that?
I think they're tall trees, right? Tall, skinny trees.
Oh, skinny trees, yeah, but they don't get a very wide trunk on them, so that's why they have to get this. You can't really get a full size body blend out of Sen. You have to get the smaller pieces and put them together. So that's why I think it's part of the reason why the Japanese companies moved away from it. People started to get more critical about wanting either a solid piece of wood or 2 pieces joined together or whatever, and they wanted less of this, kind of puzzle piece thing.
Hey, Donny, you and I have had this discussion before, but this is open to anybody that wants to answer it. For the people that think it was Carina wood, I've entertained this discussion before with then people saying that Carina is not even a wood and Carina is more. Yeah. So Donny, do you want to touch on that for the people that argue that it is absolutely Carina?
Right. I'll jump in because I was actually about to mention that on that prior discussion, the only 1-piece shark I've ever built was White Limba, which is often referred to as Carina. Carina is more of a like a marketing term to describe White Limba and other similar woods, and Gibson used it to describe their, the original Explorers and V's. But yeah, Carina is not really indicative of one species, and frankly, it's similar to ebony. It's not indicative of one species. There's a family of species that we use that fall under the umbrella of the term ebony. It's the same kind of thing, except Carina, I feel, is even a bit more manufactured. And in the case of the destroyer, even Ed was guilty of this. He has in interviews said, the early ones were made of this beautiful Carina wood, and that's where you get the tone. Now they make them out of this shitty ash, and they don't sound right. He doesn't, they're not ash, they're Sen, and the originals were Sen. The only thing about Carina that comes into discussion is that in those early ads, it actually said 2 different, slightly conflicting things, and I see why people get confused. It pretty strictly said the wood was select ash. However, under the finish section, it said it was a Carina finish. And people associating Carina with the earlier Gibsons misinterpreted that to think that it was saying it was Carina wood, meaning White Limba. But so there's a whole, list of terms that people get confused by. It's layers upon layers, and even Ed got confused.
Karina kind of rolls off the tongue kind of nicely too.
Right.
So
50s marketing, that's what it was. So it was guys with cigars,
it's exotic, it's African wood,
Yes.
But Donnie, thanks for clearing that up, though, because that conversation seems to come up more often than it should. But I think you clarified that really well.
And it's very vastly different from White Limba or Karina. The one guitar I've made, like I said, was a one-piece shark body, and the guy sent me the blank. It was beautiful. It's really light. It's almost like the little grain lines in it are almost like mahogany, but it's like a cream instead of like a toffee color like mahogany would be. Extremely light. That shark I built was probably 3.5 pounds, or maybe 4 pounds for a shark. It was unbelievable. It had
the body weight,
the whole thing with all the hardware installed. It was featherweight, incredibly light guitar. Because again, it's 1.5 inches thick, so that kind of helps with the weight. But yes, Limba is very light, and it makes sense as to why Gibson would have chosen it for that line, because those are huge bodied guitars, the Explorer, the V, the Modern.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah.
I used to always argue that, like, if Kobe Bryant took on Fruitcake Tony in basketball, it would be Black Mamba versus White Limba. That's the way I describe it to people.
Tony would hold his own, man.
Our companies will always try to sell you on the idea that the wood they choose is for the tone and for you. And really, it's not. It's about the machining and, expense and things like that. They try to snow you.
Yeah.
The guitar we could do a whole show on the guitar manufacturing industry and the myth.
I'm sure.
The myth of reality and so on and so forth. And it's the gritty underworld, man. But I did want to bring up, that reminded me, talking about the wood, when Ed said that, I got a new Ibanez Destroyer and they changed the wood. And that's why they don't sound as good. It's like, well, some truth to that. The other thing, they changed the pickups. Ed was not aware that they were no longer the Super 70s. They were no longer the AF construction with the A8 Alnico magnet in there. So, but who knew? I mean, I didn't even know there was an Alnico 8 magnet in the Super 70 until, well after the fact.
Interesting.
So we just, back in those 70s, man, we weren't concerned about Alnico, or like I said, I had a Olympic hot rod kit that I put in. There were a couple ceramic magnets, popped those into my patent number Gibson pickups on my 65 SG. It boosted the output, boosted the treble, and it was aggressive. So, now as everyone knows, Alnico 2, Alnico 5, Alnico this, Alnico that, Alnico 8, but back then, man, we didn't know about that stuff.
And how could you? Because guitars came from the factory as they came. There wasn't a lot of info. People weren't making aftermarket parts to the extent that they do now. So there wasn't as much experimentation with different things. You got a Gibson SG, it sounded like a Gibson SG. Swap the pickup, it sounds different. And then you start to associate that difference in tone with things that may not be related to the specifics of the pickup.
Yeah.
Ed was just learning like all of us, none of us knew the answers, and it's just one of those things. You got to get out there and get your hands dirty, and just dig in and do it. That's why.
Well, that's what Eddie taught us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it started. I would have never I spent my entire childhood taking apart BMX bikes and changing my mag wheels and then my seat and then my handlebar, all these other things. Never thought to do it with guitars, even though I play guitars the whole time, until I heard that that's what Eddie did. And then it became routine. It was like, oh, well, I like this aspect, but on this guitar, I want to change this with this and all this stuff. Prior to Eddie doing things like that, I don't think anybody thought you could do that.
Very few.
Experimentation, but just like when Ed came along, that just blew the doors wide open.
Yeah.
And again, I had that SG, and I was trying to figure out, like Ed was with that, he had the Tune Maestro on his 335, trying to figure out how to keep that thing in tune. I came up my Truex, and they weren't necessarily the best for tone. Like I found, like I dropped down the bridge, so the strings just went flat in there, so they had less resistance getting caught up, lubricate the nut, and everything like that. All that stuff he went through to keep it in tune. I bent the bar up so I could drop it down further,
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading about the Floyd Rose for the first time in the clamping nut. I'm just like, how do I make my own clamp? To clamp things down at the nut.
Yeah. Yeah, but I remember the first time my dad took me guitar shopping when I was really, really young, but I had been taking lessons, so I was learning. So it was like time for me to get a guitar. But I remember the formulaic response of a father at the time was, "Well, what kind of guitar sound do you like? What albums do you like?" And then I would say, "I like this album. I like this album," and then he would be like, "Oh, well, you like a Les Paul, or oh, you like a Strat," because those were definitive sounds that we had in our head. There was no mixing and matching at the time. If you liked a guitar tone that was a Les Paul sound, then you bought a Les Paul kind of thing. There was no concept of, well, I like this body shape, but I want to put a different pickup in it to make it sound like that, or that it just didn't exist.
Yeah, chocolate and vanilla.
Right. Yeah, that's what it was.
That's right.
That's what it was.
Wood
You're a Gibson or a Fender guy.
Wood wasn't that much of a concern. I mean, we knew mahogany, we knew about the Les Paul construction maple top or whatever. A guitar was too heavy and bright. That's about what we knew. I didn't really, no one could really tell you any valid difference between ash and alder. It's just
right.
People thought they were almost the same. They both began with old. So that was, just back then that just wasn't a concern. People weren't obsessed with body woods as much.
Yeah.
Well, Les Paul was designed way before the Marshall amp and feedback.
Yeah.
So I don't think they were thinking, hey, this has great tone. I think it was.
That's true.
That's right.
The wood of the time, I think.
Yep.
There you go. Hey guys, I'll be right back. Be right back.
Wood of the Time sounds like it should be an album.
Wood of the times.
That really should be like my next album, Wood of the Time.
One other point I wanted to bring up that a correction to something on the Frankenstein, which I hadn't realized until I dug through some stuff on Instagram. And I guess I was told wrong again by Bo Shannon. He just misremembered with the white Strat, the white 61 Strat when Ed painted the white Strat, the 61 Strat from Sunburst to white. It was such a brief period because there was those photos at the Golden Bear on January 16th, and I had thought that the white Strat shots were taken at the Whiskey the previous weekend, which would have been the 14th and the 15th, or the 13th and the 14th, or whatever. But those Golden Bear shots on January 16th shows Ed playing the Strat, and it's still Sunburst. So now I think that the Bo Shannon shots were actually that string of gigs at the Whiskey at the end of January.
Oh,
wow.
Tightens up the window between the appearance of the naked, unfinished Frankie body at the Pasadena Civic in mid-February and the end of January when Ed has the 61 Strat painted white. So again, he was moving fast and furious.
Johnny, you'll have to check your weather charts and tell us what day it rained.
Well, you don't get snow in California.
No. The only thing you get are rainy days in January and February, and that's it.
I checked those weather charts, and there's no dates in February where there was excessive rain that matches up with any Van Halen dates, especially at the Starwood. Middle of the week, and any of that. I do find like there was some dates in May, and I think everybody for some reason is confusing it with probably a post demo recording together at the Starwood that probably had Mo Alston, and then probably what's his name? I always forget the guy's name, but the guy who insisted he was there, but the guy who played with I can't even remember the name of the guy he played with now. The guy who's doing the stuff with Clapton now, Ben Morrison, the guy who played with Ben Morrison. He was in the Sunset Sound stuff, but he insisted it was pissing down rain, and Ted said it was pouring down rain. All these people say it was raining, but February 2nd and 3rd, the weather charts show no rain. Or if they show any rain, it's like minimal amounts, and it's like in Signal Hill or something like that. It just doesn't jive. But in May, there was this crazy freak rainstorm, and it happens to coincide with the weekday Van Halen show at the Starwood. That's what was happening. Either that, or it's like you got to make up a story for the press. It's raining tonight. Oh God, it's raining stuff. I know it's there.
When you're trying to, people are remembering stuff. I mean, listening to interviews with people where they have to remember times and dates, it's way off. It never matches anything.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Eddie's the worst of him. Eddie's stories never match up when you.
It's tough. I mean, I look back at my own stuff and say, gosh, was that in like January? Especially in California, like time becomes a blur because you don't have to change the seasons. So
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Remember, it's like, was that October or was that April? Like, I'm just remembering of all crazy things. I was looking up Coachella when the first Coachella happened. And of course, Coachella now is a springtime thing. But the very first one was in October. So, and then after we skipped a year, and then they came back in 2001 and moved in April, and stayed in April ever since. But if I was going to remember, I went to the first Coachella in, I don't know, April of '99. That was what I would say probably. I can actually look it up. You can't blame Ed for not remembering all that stuff, and especially, gosh, as time got on, it's just like, this is tough to remember exact details.
Yeah.
And it's a cliche, but to Ed, it wasn't that important like it is to us. For him, it was. He was just it was going through the motions, making his tool work the way he needed it to, because that's how he completed the job. But for us, it's like, how do we capture that? And we look at all these details. So it makes total sense to me. Even barring, I saw Alan talking earlier in the chat. Ed has a reputation for lying in interviews, which that did happen on occasion, intentional lies. But most of the time, he was shooting straight, but not remembering because those details mattered.
Yeah.
And
Well, Chris, you said that Eddie said he painted the shirt guitar the same time he painted the Frankenstrap. But I'm wondering if he was thinking the 61 Strat and the Destroyer when he was. Because he was modding both those at the same time, sanded down the 61 Strat as well as converting the Destroyer into the Shark. So I wonder if that's what he remembers.
I think he just got a bunch of stuff mixed up. I think that's what it was. I think it probably was he was painting the Shark, like you said, doing the red and silver, or like an aluminum, or whatever you want to call it. And I think that's thinking put down 61. That's probably what he's probably planning on painting it white, or who knows what.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like I said, we definitely know that sometime in either late 75 or relatively early 76 that he painted the Destroyer white, and that the 61 Strat stayed sunburst, until he did paint that white. But that was like, like I said, that's now we see that as like January.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, he wasn't keeping a journal.
Right.
I agree with you guys. He wasn't necessarily just lying. It wasn't that he was a liar. It kind of bothers me when I hear that. In your book, ironically, in Eruption, Chris, there's a section called Musical Interlude, and it's Eddie Van Halen and Tony Iommi.
Right.
And in that interview, ironically enough, he is telling a story, Eddie is, about Tony. The first time they had gone on tour with Tony, he walks up to Tony at one of the first times they had an engaging conversation one-on-one, and he says to him, hey, he was talking about an overdub on a track of an album, and Tony looked at him, had no idea what he was talking about. And Eddie found that as ironic. He was like, wow, and then he made the analogy. He said, you know what? He said, a few years later, I had so many albums and tracks that I had done, I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And so that's really what it is. It's not that Eddie was trying to really deceive anybody. He just had so much stuff.
Plus, the other thing to consider that none of us can actually relate to is when somebody's talking to you and asking Chris, this as an interviewer, when you're asking somebody to recant a story and share stories with you, they don't necessarily assume that every detail is going to be nitpicked till the end of time, and their feet are going to be held to the fire. They're recalling it the way they recall it, and that kind of thing. And then we spend decades later dissecting every detail, every punctuation. Wait, he kind of said that with a all these minor details that I'm sure when you're telling something off the cuff, trying to be comfortable with him, it's almost unfair that. In today's modern age of social media and everything like that, everybody kind of has to be conscious about everything they say.
Well,
Not in the 70s, you didn't.
To me, it was like a fair warning listing thing, and here we just listened to fair warning, and at the very end, I'm telling you guys, like, yeah, and there's no instrumentals on this album. We just finished listening to it, and it's like, and then as soon as we finished up, I thought, oh, Sunday afternoon in the park, like,
right?
Like, there's no instrumentals, and like here we are, just minutes after it finished up, and I just was just talking off the cuff. And what I meant was no like traditional Eddie Van Halen guitar showcase,
right?
Like there were on the previous album.
Yep.
I guess there's no instrumentals, and as soon as all of a sudden the brain kicks in, and it's just like, oh god, I'm looking like an idiot, and it's there, preserved and on YouTube for eternity.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. That's the last thing you think about. And especially, we're talking about Eddie in his younger days when maybe he wasn't quite as polished doing interviews, wasn't quite media savvy. So you're saying things off the top of your head, and all of a sudden somebody's holding your feet to the fire, and you're being grilled on something you said 5 years ago, and you're like, I don't remember even doing the interview, let alone the details of the story.
Yeah, Ed's got a lot on his mind in those days. A lot. Yeah, he forgets.
I think in the early days in particular, though, we do have examples that we can look at and say these are lies, because Ed later admitted they were. And we know that Dave probably pushed him, or however that happened, to be cool in interviews. So the chainsaw to the shark thing is a lie.
Yeah.
Like, Ed knows he didn't do that, and that didn't happen. The turning the Variac up instead of down is a lie. That didn't happen, and later he admitted it didn't happen. So we do have examples of that, but to paint him as a liar in interviews is unfair, and some people I think do that, which isn't, it's not quite fair.
Well, I think too, sometimes you got to think these are trade secrets that he had, and if somebody says, "Oh, how did you do that?" It's not, it's a personal question. I don't want to tell you how I'm doing this, because now everybody's going to go out and do it. So yeah, I don't know how to wire a pickup. Oh, and that stops them from asking more about the wiring. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, okay. Let's talk about your playing then.
Yeah.
There was a few things like when Ed, started to have a falling out with Charvel too. He started to kind of, not really give Charvel the props anymore. Like he kind of tended to cover up their involvement and stuff because he was pissed off at them. There was a bit of that. Also, just being on the magazine side of things for so many years, these articles go through a number of hands, before they reach the final output. And by people, and sometimes the guy who does the writing, the person who does the writing, may not fully comprehend. They may. I had an example with Jeff Beck when I interviewed him for the first time, and he used this phrase "chalk and cheese," and I've since learned it's a British, common British thing, chalk and cheese. It's just two things that are just different, apples and oranges. It's like a British apples and orange, But all of us, a guitar player, were sitting there going like, "What the hell, chalk cheese?" And it's like maybe he said talking cheese. And they came up with all these things, and it was like chocolate cheese. Whole thing. And that was, just to clear the internet so we can look up chalk and cheese or whatever and figure it out. So we weren't talking cheese, at the end of the day, and it's wrong. And I realized it was chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
It's true, but we're a bunch of California foods, and it's like talking cheese, I guess. I don't know. But I think that happened a lot with the early stuff. I think with the jazz opera stuff, it's better to listen to the tapes than to actually read what was in. Because they talked something jazz product about the weight of Frankenstein and about it being heavy like a Les Paul, and jazz is that was there in the interview, and stuff gets added and why, who knows.
Right. I tell me if this makes sense to you guys who have actually interviewed him. I always kind of viewed Donny, to speak specifically to what you were saying. Obviously there were some things that he probably didn't recollect or didn't remember, things like that. But in terms of the intentionality of some of his stories, I always kind of viewed him. Do you guys remember the Christopher Nolan Batman movie, The Dark Knight, where there's 3 different times in the movie the Joker starts to talk about why he has these scars, and they're all different stories every time. And he's like, let me tell you how I got these scars. And each time it takes place. Well, Christopher Nolan did an interview where he talked about, people would ask him, well, how did the Joker get the scars? And he was like, that's the brilliance that you guys aren't getting it. You're never going to know. every time he starts to tell a different reason until people start saying, we're never going to figure it out. That was the kind of thing. And I kind of viewed Eddie in a weird way the same thing. There are certain, like Johnny said, trade secrets where I kind of thought Eddie would intentionally make stuff up about the same story different times because he was never going to let it out.
Well, and this is mentioned in the book, and Ed did say this, mystery. You know, one thing that he did like about the way things were in the pre-social media, YouTube, internet days was this sense of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
That was about Led Zeppelin. You know, you didn't know much about these guys. You know, you saw the song Remains the Same, and you thought, you know, Jimmy Page was out on this moor and he changed his colors at night.
You know, Chris.
Spoiler alert.
Well, another thing, you know, Eddie went through a learning process, and a lot of what we're learning about him and everything that we talk about, he's learning stuff. And interesting enough, Pretty Woman, when he went up into the hills from the club and he let everybody listen to the demo, and then they almost scooped him on it, and then he got chewed out. That was a learning lesson for that boy.
Yeah.
He learned the hard way that you can't necessarily trust everybody. He needs to keep his guard up all the time. And, you know, he was taken advantage of a lot. He was in many ways. Yeah. And there's probably ways that we don't even know that, you know, that he experienced. And so I noticed after that incident happened, that was a learning lesson from him. It matured him. And it was a lesson on the road that he just he carried with him.
Yeah, there was some guardedness to him. You know, there's times there were times where he would let me in on certain things, and it was just not for public consumption.
Sure, of course.
And to respect him to this day, and not tell that stuff I would love to, but he told me some great stories, but they were just between him and I. And sorry, people, they're great, but I can't do that to him. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't necessarily lie as much as he held things back. You know, there were times where he just didn't want to give you the full detail about something. I mean, there's times where you can't remember. I mean, I talk about recording in the studio. Every time I've recorded in the studio, I can't tell you. You know, I can tell you the basics, but I can't tell you the details. There's something going for a sound, and it's late at night. Yeah. And you're working on something, and you're trying all these different pedals or something, and it's just like, oh, that works, and then you just move on. Got that or that track or that solo down or that rhythm part, and you move on. You're going on to the next thing.
You know, Chris, I've been meaning to ask you, because you're one of a few people in this chat who actually saw Eddie in clubs in the 70s. Do you remember him turning his back and not letting the people watch him do some of his solo work?
I don't. I think that was more when he's telling that story. It sounds like more like when they were rehearsing and friends would come over and stuff. There was obviously Chris Holmes. You know, there was I can't remember names. It's late at night. The guy who gave it later, David Lee Roth later, the guy who turned him on to the MXR for 90. And actually
Terry Kilgore.
Terry Kilgore.
Yeah. Wasn't it from George Lynch too, though? He was hiding him.
Part of that crew, they'd come over, they'd see him doing stuff. And again, the thing with the tapping thing, and this is one revelation that I was able to piece together from, because I've seen the Advanced Stephen Rosen book. And there's a question there where he asked Ed, when did you start tapping? It's like, that was around the time that we stopped playing at Cigar. It's like, there's a distinctive date, and it's not an exact date, but it's a real time frame. We know, end of 76 is when he got into tapping. That's why we don't hear it on those earlier bootlegs. That's why we don't see pictures of him tapping or anything. And of course, Eruption, we don't hear a version of Eruption with the full-fledged, tapping interlude until the middle of 77, after even the demos are recorded. We don't hear that happen. So he's woodshedding on it, he's perfecting it. It probably takes him about 6 months to really get down with it where he feels comfortable about performing it live. And at that point, of course, it's like, there it is. It's not that long. Then they record the album, they go off on tour. But yeah, I never recall him turning his back. And you don't really see pictures of him either with the capture.
Interesting.
I think it was a matter of him kind of confusing rehearsals with shows or whatever. But I could see definitely those times where people are coming by and it's competition, and they're right in his face, and that's when okay, I'm going to my back now or whatever, or just not do it,
Yeah.
Do you think when he first started tapping, he appreciated what it was, or did people have to tell him that was really cool? Like, did he think maybe it was like cheating, like everybody else used one hand, I got to use two?
I think he really, whether he was inspired by seeing Harvey Mandel do, a similar thing or whatever. But I think once he got onto it, it was just like, this is a whole new thing.
Right.
A lot of it comes from his background as a pianist.
And in your book, in his words, he, I don't want to say it because I don't want to mess up the book, but get the book, guys. He breaks it down. Edward Van Halen talks about his tapping in depth, in Eruption, all about capoing with his left hand and hitting the note with his right, and he breaks it down in the book.
Yeah, and he was very open about that. I can remember, I think one of the first times I think it was the first time I interviewed him about balance. We were just talking about tapping, and I said, you're not doing that much of this thing and whatever, and he kind of gave me a mini lesson, he picked up his ball, and just shows like, I don't, see most guys go like this and they hammer, and they hit the thing. I flip, I go like this, I dig in and push,
Yes.
I mean, so that's why, it's like, oh, God, that's why it sounds so ballsy,
That's right.
Yeah, his attack is different.
Yeah. It's like these, it's hammers and like this, I don't even know what to call it, it's just really, he's really digging in there, get it going,
Yeah.
He's open about stuff. He would show you, stuff all day long, but there was, I mean, again, it's like, 2013, the Holy Grail Marshall was there, and it had a piece of tape on it, and it had, it had the voltage setting for the Variac, which is 89 volts, and we weren't allowed to photograph that, but that information has gotten out there in the meantime.
Yeah.
But he just didn't want to reveal that. It's like, again, a little bit of mystery, but that was, it was just interesting. It's like, set Variac to 89 volts, is on there.
It's interesting because your book also, I'm going to refer back to your book several times. It's a really good flipping book, you guys. There's a section in there where Eddie's backstage. He's getting ready for a show, and they've done their sound check, and he hears this massive noise coming from the arena, and they come out, and there's Ted Nugent with his rig playing on his rig, sounding just like Ted Nugent. And every time I hear little stories of this and that about Eddie and things, Eddie sounded like Eddie because Eddie played like Eddie. It was in his hands. Most of what we hear is in his hands, because if a guy like Ted Nugent could walk up to his rig and sound like Ted Nugent, that just tells you that the hands have a lot to do with the tone.
That's what she said.
Found out.
So, it's funny thing, like I just, it's so weird how parallel, that's no adjective like that, like finding out that he holds his pick, with, he anchors it with his middle finger, more than, like a lot of players hold it with their middle finger, and more with his middle finger. I just gravitated towards that, it's like these little things that it's like, gosh, we were kind of on a similar journey. I mean, obviously he was Eddie Van Halen, I was just, Joe Schlub, but, it's just like, gosh, I fully get where he was coming from, because I went through a lot of that similar type of thing. It's just when I play, it just seems more in control. Of course, it also leaves the finger free for tapping. Once I figured out about what was going on there, after I saw Van Halen that first time in July of '78.
Yeah.
But it's it was in his hands. I've told this story so many times of just sitting there with him and at the console in 5150, and then playing that Ernie Ball Music Band unplugged. It's 90% of the Eddie Van Halen tone right there, and he's not even in an amp.
They would mock his pedal board, and then at the end of the night, they'd want to know what it was all about. It's just awesome. This is absolutely awesome.
Some just stock NXR pedals.
Yeah.
A couple of Echoflexes. And that's, but it's a funny thing. So I have all that stuff. I have an original MXR flanger. I have an old 74 script Phase 90, tape echo plex, that's basically, you name it. But you put those things together, and it's like, yeah, the pieces start to come together, and you start to hear it. But you got to play with aggression. You got to force. You can't do the Yngwie Malmsteen super light feather touch thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for Ed. You've got to just hold that neck like you're hanging on for dear life.
Yes.
And actually, Holly, you were asking about, did Ed lift weights? I never saw any type of exercise equipment at 5150 old, or in the garage, where I went a couple times, especially with the guitar, and we went down into the garage, and I didn't see any exercise equipment. I think Ed got his muscles from his playing, because digging in, man. Ford.
Wow.
This is weight.
Wow.
That's how he got those muscles. That's how he stayed muscle.
And if you play, especially early Van Halen stuff, and some tracks on Fair Warning come to mind. If you play it to try to make it sound like the way Ed played it, you'll get worn out pretty quick. Especially if you're playing it again and again like he did.
Yeah, it's an aggressive style.
The song I'm the One is an aerobic exercise.
Oh,
absolutely.
Quite straight up. Yep.
Hey, gentlemen, really quick, I apologize to interrupt. I got to take off. It's time for me to let dogs out there at the door. I love you guys. I'm so happy and thankful for you to do this. Thank you to everybody in the chat, but most importantly, thank you to our guests. I love having you guys on, and please come back. We'll see you soon.
I was
love
going to
you,
say
brother.
last
Love you,
time, I'm
brother.
still waiting
Be
for
well.
your Price is Right rerun to show up.
Oh my God.
Oh,
I
yeah.
lost.
He went there.
Yeah. I'll see you guys soon.
Be
See you
well,
soon,
Neil.
Neil.
Love you, brother.
All right, Neil. All
Hey,
right.
we got some trivia coming up, Tony? Or
Let's see. We'll do some trivia. We will. How about we play for a Fair Warning pass?
Nice. Very nice, guys.
All right, an orange one. Right there. All right. So one question. If you're the winner, there's an email address down below. Hit me up. I'll mail you that pass out tomorrow morning. Simple question. Shark Week question. Let's see. All right. That's right.
Good
All
luck,
right.
you guys.
Here we go. Real
Good luck.
quick.
You're going to need it.
Van Halen trivia for tonight. The Discovery Channel has been doing Shark Week how many consecutive years? Simple question. All right.
Excellent. We'll float that out there.
Give me a number for that.
Nice.
First one that we see.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Hey,
so
ahead.
Johnny, are we missing anything, or do we need to?
Tomorrow I'll realize about 10 things we probably missed.
I'm trying to.
It always happens in the replay, Johnny. I'm sitting here listening, and
Yeah.
there you go, and there's one, and
I think we've been doing pretty good. I think we made sure. That's why I thought doing the timeline would be best. That way we can kind of keep focused and stay on track. But I think we hit the main points.
I guess one thing we didn't talk about was, even though the shark is pictured on Women and Children first album cover, it's not played on the album.
Yeah, and that's funny that you say, because when I bought that album, I in my head I pictured him playing the entire album with that guitar.
Yeah.
And I thought that the guitar was green and white because the album cover was green and the photo was black and white.
Yeah.
wow.
And then I saw a color photo. It's like, that is cool. It's red.
Excellent.
That was, I think, all of ours as kids. Yeah. Our impression. That's a cool drill, dude.
That's way cool. Way cool.
I've got 3 of these. One's painted the red, black, and white, and then I have one that's painted like the bumblebee. And I used to use these all the time, and they were always in my videos. But I've graduated to more modern drills that make sense. You can't, like, the batteries don't last very long in these.
Do you?
I
So
think we're getting an answer in here. So, all right.
You want to say the yeah, I see what correct.
It started in 1987. There is your correct answer right
that's
there.
it right there, Dan. You rock, brother. Nice. Dan in New Jersey.
34 years. So Randy Price said 34, or it started in 1987. So 1987 is how many years ago? 35. I knew it was just short.
And there were a couple of answers in the chat of 35
that was
years.
Close. Yeah.
We're very close.
That's right. Yeah.
But I believe Dan's the only one who put 34. The only one I saw. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. I'm double checking, Tony.
Yeah.
I'm just double checking real quick. Yeah, that's what it seems to me to be.
There we go. Dan, thank you, dude. I'll mail that out.
Nice.
In the morning.
Nice.
Yep, got one more fair warning pass. We'll sling to you next week. Yeah.
It's not using the chart. I did use a destroyer though, and you know that it was linked back to his buddy, his Holmes, who got the destroyer at the same time he's dead.
Oh yeah.
That's what he used.
Hey, Chris, you're going underwater again, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I hold this up, I kind of block my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You come in closer, crystal clear.
Yeah, but you know, again, we have the Zozor shot that you can see that kind of in the background. You know, that the studio and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ed was, you know, he wasn't that. Didn't express he was that thrilled about. Like, it still wasn't quite right to him. But it's like I know that, you know, Holmes had done a few things to it. I don't remember if the Super 70s were still in there. Nick Allen, yeah, if you can jump in here on the conversation, if you can remember what pickups were in it. When, you know,
I have a funny story that I read about Chris Holmes talking about lending the guitar to Eddie. And after he realized Van Halen went on the road, he went to the house to get his guitar back. Eddie's mom answered the door, took him into Eddie's bedroom. There his guitar was, but it was missing the humbucker, the bridge humbucker, and the bridge.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's it. I remember that.
he robbed it. So where did it end up? And you see in that in those photos of Sunset Sound where his Les Paul had the bridge pickup removed, and then on tour the neck pickup removed. Like, what was going on?
Yeah, he was moving stuff around.
He was tinkering. Right,
and
Holly?
then there's a photo of the Frankenstrap before he started playing it on tour. It was the Loss of Control video, where they and if you look at the humbucker, it's got the metal cover on it. So which one of those pickups do you think, you know, could that have been the Chris Holmes pickup? Took it on tour.
You know, now that you mentioned that, I never considered that. I'd always thought it was from the Les Paul, because that was also missing a pickup around the same time.
Well, yeah, it's like there's 3 guitars it could have come from, at least that we know of, right? But when he finally played that guitar on tour, the Frankie, he took it out.
Yeah.
So, you know, I tried to message Chris on Facebook a couple of years ago to ask him if he ever got the pickup on the bridge back, but he never answered me.
Wow.
His health's not been great. So
No.
Yeah.
He was going to play here in town just before COVID, and I thought, you know, it was a small club, and I thought maybe I can kind of get back there and see if I can talk to him. And then COVID hit, and then just when COVID was starting to taper off and bands were going back out on the road, he was scheduled to come back. And I thought, okay, maybe I can do it now. And then he got sick. So hopefully he'll get better. And But it's more important that he gets better than to find out what happened to pickup.
We Chris when we were working on the book, and it was the same thing. It's just unfortunately he just wasn't the health and the mind to really talk with us for any length of time. It was going to be one of our musical interludes, and especially for those early days things. I mean, there's so much gear that Ed borrowed from us. Those clean Marshalls.
Yeah.
That we see in so many of the club shops were Chris's. And you can see them in that picture of the Destroyer. Find it if I can scroll fast enough. Let's go here. As you can see in the backdrop, what's that for the amp? It's Clean Marshall. There's
there is.
Wow.
Van Halen, so many other club shows.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
we were, and there's a story that we uncovered Marshall, what they call a bullet strip off, but Chris had actually stolen those and took them off to make it harder for someone to identify that they were the ones that he had stolen. And that's where Ed kind of got that whole thing from. He just fascinating to add to the chapter of Van Halen lore, if you can remember anything. Those days, they were definitely kind of quote unquote partners in crime,
Yeah. Yeah.
So Johnny, you're saying that by tomorrow morning we'll have a part 2 already underway.
Oh yeah. Oh boy. 6 a.m.
To be continued.
To be
Hey,
continued.
there's always
I
another
forgot
day, right?
this.
There's I'm sure there's going to be Shark Week 35, right?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have to change the trivia question though.
Neil wouldn't have it any other way, you
I
guys.
know.
You got 2 favorite times a year, Shark Week and Halloween.
And Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's already camping out outside those Planet Halloween stores. Waiting for him to open.
We see it was, I guess, that there was DiMarzio's in there as shown in that photo, and Ed took him out and put the Super Destroyer, one of his original Super 70s from his Destroyer, into Holmes' guitar for the session. So, which makes sense. I mean, that's Ed obviously knew that those pickups had some mojo to them. So it's again, why I think that's why I guess part of swapping the pickups in the Shark. And I think it's I think I realized it was that chunk of wood that he took out, but I think he was trying all these different pickups to kind of get back those frequencies whatever way he could. And somehow he settled, I guess. He settled on the Mighty Might on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Which were made, those Mighty Mites were made by Seymour Duncan. That's a trivia there too. So that was what Seymour Duncan was doing before he became Seymour Duncan. So that was initial before he died. Well, then he was doing stuff, for Mighty Might, and then he started Duncan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the terrible news, Mo Austin passed recently.
Mm-hmm.
Tough to hear
Rest in
that.
peace, Mo.
Yeah. Yeah, that was tough to hear.
Yeah. My goodness, you guys.
And the future.
All right, so
So
Johnny, anything else you want to touch on?
Oh yeah, I was going to show you, the post lawsuit. I mean, they still made Destroyers, but they had to change them, right? So this was something that I dug up in that old computer that I had, and this is kind of showing. Whoa.
Give it a slight,
Angle a little bit.
just a
What
little
that
more
is,
angle.
the red is the Destroyer, the red is the Shark, and the black is the post lawsuit Destroyer. So that's the difference in the shape. And when I got the Shark or the Destroyer, see these little notches like that one here and the one at the horn. That's all I thought they really did to change the shape. So I was kind of surprised when I tried to figure it out a little bit, like put stripes on it, like why things weren't lining up. But yeah, that was kind of cool. I have templates and all kinds of stuff that I found in that the old hard drive. There's a template. Oh, it's completely white. That's a template that I made for the holes.
I see it.
So I made sure that every single hole was the right distance apart, because they're not exactly the same. Like they're random, right? They're straight in a line, but they're not. Some are.
They're not spaced properly.
No, they're not. That's one clue to why what he wasn't trying to make it look like that. He was.
That's part of why it looks like a shark bite.
Now, yeah. Oh, there was one thing that I found in some of these photos. I don't know if it'll show up on there, but we were talking about the 80 grit sandpaper, the 60 grit. Oh, it's not showing up. If I turn this out, you can see a little bit in here. You can see the coarse sanding marks.
I see it.
I'll put these up on my Instagram, but
please do.
Finds that 80 or 60 grit sandpaper back to 1977. He probably bought it for this project and to remove the finish off of that 61 Strat, and he still had it in 79. I think that's really all I had there.
And this is kind of crazy question. The Ibanez Destroyer lawsuit model. Were there any changes that had to be made to the neck or the headstock, or was it all body?
All body.
It was all body because the headstock was already unique. Yeah.
I don't think they continued with the headstock though. I'm not sure right after.
Like
mine is completely different.
Look at the Ibanez, kind of the signature Ibanez that we now know, that kind of has that arrowhead type of shape. It's more straight. But the funny thing is that the Ibanez Destroyer doesn't actually match the Gibson shape either exactly. It's actually a little bit more extreme of an angle, and even the top part that comes up is a little bit different. So it's not an exact copy. So I don't know if it's far enough for legal. I don't know what that is, but that body you showed me makes me wonder, because I could move things angles down a little bit and move things around. It's funny because I don't want to get into a big long side story, but there was a period here a few years ago where a friend and I were trying to revive the Hamer guitar brand. And we went through a bunch of legalities and dealing with lawyers on trademark names and body shapes and dealing with Gibson and various other things. And it's kind of one of these things where it's not a distinct definition, but it has to be like off by a certain amount, because there's nothing more than to revive the Hamer Standard Custom. So we do it because there's basically been an agreement between Hamer and Gibson that has expired. So they weren't allowed to do that. They weren't allowed to do the vector, and it's kind of hard for all the money that we're going to pay for the Hamer name and a handful of trademarks to make it really worth it. In the end, and plus the current owners of Hamer also just ghosted us after we made a very generous offer and agreed to buy off their remaining stock and everything. But it's just now the way Gibson's being very litigious, it's getting even harder, to do these things. And I wonder if that somehow was holding up the project in some way, shape, or form, because that should have been happening by now. And I know everyone's foaming at the mouth to get that, but these are trying times, The other thing is how much the shark inspired. I don't know if it was a direct inspiration for the Charvel Star, but we obviously saw Ed with that. There's this picture. I'm not sure if this is a Charvel or not, but this is like a real interesting, star shape.
The Rickenbacker, right?
Rockinger.
Rockinger, yeah. Sorry, yeah, Rockinger.
That's right. I remember that because Kramer had they had that shape too as well. So that was obviously a little bit later on. Actually, putting the Barbarian in the background, giving the timeline.
Yeah,
that's it's the puzzle. It's the Denny's, it's the Denny's Diplomat puzzle piece, putting together all the different pieces there. Of course, we all know this guy.
Yep.
There you go. Nice.
for as much as Ed said that he didn't like the sound of the Destroyer after that piece out, he sure liked a bunch of guitars with that shape, so big, yeah. And of course, the B's, as we talked about too, the B has, that doesn't have much mass there behind, underneath the tail piece. So Ed famously had the Dean B's, and he had even more famously the 58B, the Hot Teacher B, the original Gibson B. He liked B's too. He had the Ibanez B to begin with that led to the Destroyer. So
yeah.
It's just, I think the thing is, he kind of dramatized these things. It's like it didn't sound as good as it used to, or it didn't sound as good as it could. So to Ed, it just didn't sound. I think it's the way a lot of us might have interpreted, and that might have been the way Ed communicated too. So, but we saw plenty of guitars that Ed said that he didn't like that he played on stage for more than you would think if a guitar he didn't like.
Excellent, Chris.
It's funny you showed the Star guitar, and I painted that for a client of mine. And when you're doing something like taping, or you're recreating the footsteps that he did, like drilling the holes, you get a feeling like you understand the process of what he was doing. And I found with the Star guitar, it's 1/4-inch tape. As I went around the roundover to try to go from the top to the side to the back, I had to pull the tape at a certain tension, or it wouldn't go in the direction that I wanted it to, or I had to go in. So I realized that, almost to the point of breaking, you had to pull the tape to get it right. So that's how much tension Eddie had to pull on it to get it to where it had to go. So you learn a little thing. You can look at 100 photos, but you're never going to understand it until you actually wrap the tape around the body.
There you go.
Things aren't so simple.
Yeah. And
Next
then
level.
cutting
That's
all
next
those
level.
shapes out, you actually had to cut them on the body.
Wow.
Yeah.
Use an X-Acto knife. Is that what he worked with?
A sharp knife of some kind.
Just
Yeah.
a sharp knife and a little straight edge.
Yeah. And it, once I started, it was a lot of fun. And when I got to the last one, I was disappointed there wasn't any more. And I thought, geez, did he get bored, or did he go just like, that's enough? Or, it's strange because the top of the guitar is very complicated, and yet the bottom is just, squiggly lines. So I don't know, when you're recreating something like that, you start to have these little questions, and, little pieces of tape that would be way off somewhere. You don't think it relates to anything, but it's actually, like you'd pull a piece of tape off and like stick it on and then cut. And it all joined together. You don't realize that it was all one continuous piece because you cut sections out. So it's you realize all these little things. It's kind of fun. You go through his thinking process, get into his head a little bit. But
that is so cool, John. That is so cool. That is so cool. So what's next for guitar build, Johnny? You got anything that you're working on right now?
Well, the Bumblebee thing over here, I just finished that the other day. I'm part of the team that put that together. Scott Bodden, Fugly Guitars, painted it. That goes to a guy named Howie Kittleson, who designed it. Basically, if you notice, it's got the shark. There we go, the shark headstock, and painted like the Bumblebee, but with the Frankie pattern. So it's got a little bits of pieces.
Johnny, there is a huge trend. I saw a guitar that we all know Rob Johnson. He posted a picture today of a green. It screams St. Patrick's Day. 5150, I believe it is. Forgive me if I get the guitar. I believe it's 5150. And I've just noticed, Neil's been doing that for a little while, making different colored. He did a purple one, I believe, for one of his clients. And I think it's just so cool that the theme is staying the same. Eddie's being honored, yet people are expanding their horizons with the guitar. I think it's
this one marks my last project until I get my Frankie done, because it's been I was just editing part 8 And in part 8, I say at the beginning that I haven't worked on my Frankie in about a year. And that's about 2 years ago. And now I'm going to finish this. I'm going to go back to my Frankie. I'm going to be saying the same thing. I haven't worked on it. So I've been working on other people's projects and pushing mine aside. So this
How far along are you on the
determined
Frankie?
to stop saying yes when people go, can you paint this? Can you do this? So,
how far along are you on it?
on the Frankie?
Yeah.
Not very far. The neck is pretty much done. The body is black and white, but I've gone backwards because I painted it before 2019 when the Frankie went into the Met. So again, I shelved it then. I'm like, I'm not touching it because we're going to get all these photos in. And so now I went backwards and I recreated actual wood grain. So that's what
you reverse engineered the Frankie. Is that what you're saying? I think that.
Well, I had to like basically sand off parts to add wood grain and things like that. And now I have to bring back the paint because, you know, it's kind of like taking a car and sanding the fenders all down, and you have to, you know, some people might say, why don't you just start over from the beginning? But it's a project, and that's what I do, you know, on YouTube. I start a project, and it has to go the full arc until it's done.
Sure.
And,
sure.
So, you know, I struggled with that. I thought maybe I'll make my own body because the reason with mine, the seam was in the wrong spot because, you know, I found out that the seam is on a 5-degree angle. So when I looked at mine, it's like the seam was right where it shouldn't be, which made it extremely inaccurate. It's like if the stripes were completely off. Wow. So it really bothered me. So I chiseled out the wood and replicated wood grain as best I could. Like it's pretty convincing when you see it. I hope people like what they see and think what I'm doing is not crazy.
No, your work is incredible. It is incredible.
And then my red paint, you know, I'm on the second formula to reproduce the red paint. So it's, you know, been, how many years can I spend trying to reproduce one color? Like
the original, I believe I heard you say once on a show, the original inventor of the candy apple red, 10 years. Is that how long it took you?
Yeah,
I listen to you, Johnny, when you speak. 10 years. So you spent a couple of 3 trying to get it, your process correct. You're fine, bro. You're fine, man.
Now it's just finding like the ingredients I was using worked, but I found that they were fading. So it's trying to new ideas to try to keep it from fading. So
excellent.
Yeah, it's ongoing, but that's my goal this summer is to have the red paint on. And I've said that, I think now every summer for the last 3. So
wait though until the weather conditions are right. It has to be like the right rain and humidity in it.
Yeah, I have to watch the weather. They're gonna find me in Pasadena, Eddie's backyard, and some rainy day. They're gonna, who's this guy in the backyard?
You gotta get really pissed off too. Like,
and I hope at least there's a YouTube video. That'd be awesome.
Of course, it's gonna be like a little helmet on my head, you know, a little GoPro. Yeah, I gotta be really pissed off and swear at people to be just like outside the fence. Nobody's gonna want to come in and touch me. Like I don't know what that guy's up to.
I can't wait to see it, man.
No, drive me away, and that's the last you'll ever see of me.
So, Donny, what's new with you, man? What are you building? You working on anything new?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're doing lots of the Kramer necks, which we first time we came on, we ever met.
Yeah,
on the show about the Kramers.
Yep.
Lots of Kramer necks. I recently got this, which is I guess very loosely and vaguely tied to the shark, in that this is a Schecter body, and it was made from the same templates as the original Frankenstrat. Maybe a little later, but same templates. And
oh wow,
you know, it because it's Frankie related, I guess it's shark related, and all the flats and all that good shit.
All roads.
Yeah, I guess we can always tie it back, but you know, just trying to keep up with all the Kramer stuff, man.
Very cool, Don. Chris, you got another book in you, brother? What's going on?
Not yet. Brad and I talked about something non-music related or very very tangentially related to music, but we haven't gone on that. I can't say too much. There might be a big project, but I can't say anything because I don't want to jinx it. It has some promise, but it also has some of the usual. The bigger things get, the more difficult things become. Kind of aspect, and that's about all I will say about it. But it would be very exciting. Never happened. So, but if it happens, it will be really cool.
I hope it happens, Chris, because I want to see it and read it. I want to know, man.
Got the big coming out first week of October. I'm going to be greedy here, and I don't make any money for this, but this is our second chance to try and make that damn New York Times bestseller list. Get Ed's name out there and push him out. If we can get up enough pre-orders, hopefully we can make the list on the second go around, and hopefully Dave Gold doesn't decide to release the paperback version of his book on the same time like he did with his first book.
Well, your book is also out now on audiobook.
Yes, it is
as well.
Yes, it is.
At the same time, so we have that, and but the paperback thing is our kind of our last ditch hope to make that elusive New York Times bestseller list. It's kind of a weird thing, so I don't know how much it's really based on actual sales. Because I've seen some books that have made the list that actually didn't debut as high, at least on Amazon's chart and their numbers, their stats they have, that made pretty far up the list, but they also didn't have all the competition. They came out at a very saturated date. I would just love to, like I said, just our tribute to Ed. Like we've already made the money we're going to make off the book. We're not making any more, but it would be cool to see Ed's, Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen, his name on another chart on, Billboard or whatever.
Yeah.
And then just trying to also talk to some people about other stuff, just getting Ed's name out there, and I've heard some rumblings that I might be, that EBH here might want to bring me on to do something, but that they're safe from damn show that at dinner that with another couple of guys. So it's
you would be the perfect person to do anything WVH. They should let you. I think you should. You have earned the right.
I've been friends with Matt Rock and everything, and through all the years with Ed and everything like that, and we're nuts.
You couldn't pick a more credible individual to do it on the face of the earth, Chris. So
it would be my honor to do that because I appreciate that so much. And I mean, there are times where I see stuff in the marketing where it's just like, oh, can you guys correct that? It really wasn't the 58 trim. The Frankenstein, it was a 61, and I said that in that Jazz book interview, but I confused stuff, because the 58 thing's kind of a big thing, because he did say he had a 58, and then he did acknowledge he had the 61, and we've seen the pictures of the 61, we've never seen the 58 anywhere. So, and I think the 58 is kind of here and gone. Whatever, again, nitpicking, but it's just one of those things. I just, you see this stuff out there, and especially when it comes to a big company, that I just, it kind of gets me when I see them get stuff historically wrong, and I'm like, damn it, yelling at the cloud, man. I'm old man, Dwight Simpson, man, yelling at the cloud.
Man. I hope in the future we could have Tony could have you and Brad back on. You guys make an awesome pair. You really do. You span between the two of you guys. There's about 100 years of history. If you combine the two of you guys, 90 to 100 years, I would say, of some of the best rock music history on the planet. And yeah, man.
Not completely Van Halen oriented show, man. I can go on for hours.
Yeah. Yes, you could. You certainly could, man.
We could.
Certainly could.
Johnny B Guitars and Donny Ward, thank you guys hanging out.
You guys, right there.
You guys been here before. Always great to see you guys. So thanks for being here. Absolutely. This has been real fun. I hope we covered all of this. I've always felt that the Shark guitar doesn't get enough attention. And so This has been fun and educational as well for me.
I want to do it again.
Very much so. And yeah, so we'll have, I'm sure, at some point a part 2.
There's plenty of other guitars to cover too. That's the thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of history.
Yeah.
I can go on about the oddity, like the oddities in the book. I can even add to some of that stuff, you know, that the weird stuff that people never saw live on stage. Whatever they've had. There's stories behind that stuff. You know, it was, you know, they're still trying to piece out the stuff on the 6-pack. You know, there's still the guitars that weren't cranky and they weren't this, they weren't that. You know, that we're still trying to figure out. But once the money started rolling in, the guitars started piling up too. You know, so.
Yeah. Of course they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got another book in there.
You got a couple more, Tony. You got a couple more, man.
There's another one there.
I've thought about the problem is the guitar books don't pay very well. So unfortunately, that's. And I wish when Ed was still alive, you know, Matt and I both tried to talk him into just laying out the entire collection and doing the expanded thing of what we did in Guitar Aficionado, of just taking pictures and Ed telling stories about every single guitar.
Wow.
You just need a trigger to remember stuff, you know, and you put a guitar in front of them or you put a photo in front of them or whatever, and the memory starts coming back. Try to do kind of this, you know, kind of turkey blank problem. Thing he went to interview we were supposed to do, you know, he wanted a bunch of advanced questions, you know, and I was trying to find photos and stuff too, just from that era, just to kind of, like, there was times where it's just like you wouldn't remember something and you'd show him a photo and you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, you know, now I remember that. Yeah, maybe it still may be there, I don't know. Maybe I can talk about it.
Excellent.
Yeah. We're gonna wind things down. We want to thank again Johnny B Guitars, Chris Gill, Donny Ward. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks to everybody in the chat. If you've hung out the whole time, thanks so much for being here. Let me navigate you. This weekend coming up on the channel, Saturday night, Show Me Your Pick. We'll be talking about the memorabilia and the career of Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Yeah.
Excellent.
Right here, 9 o'clock Saturday night. On the weekend, yeah.
I'm going to catch Styx. Loverboy is opening for Styx and REO Speedwagon on Saturday, so I won't be here on Saturday.
Nice.
I will be guesting on Ben Coombs. He asked me to come in and guest on Sunday Guitar Hang with Ben Coombs. I'm going to tell a couple of stories from the 80s that I've never told before. So check it out. It'll be pretty good.
Check that out. And
I get a kick out of that.
We want a full report from the show after.
Oh, yeah.
You back. Have fun and be safe, Charles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Everybody, thanks for being here. We'll see you next Wednesday right here. All Things Van Halen, Halenville Live. Any last words there, Charles Green?
Yeah, guys, you just don't forget, this is Halenville. Doesn't matter if you go north, south, east, or west. All roads lead to Van Halen. Guys, have a wonderful week. Do something nice for somebody for no reason. Lenny and Mary, it's good to see you. We love you guys. And everybody wants some. Shreddy, Joe Gerard, your band is kicking ass. Everything you've put on YouTube in the last few days is gold, my man. And I've been waiting for a couple of days to give you a shout out on tonight's show. You absolutely rock. And you take care. Everybody else, you guys rock on and be well. Take care.
Nice seeing you, Charles. Thank you.
Take care, you guys.
Take it easy, man.